7 brides walked into Declan Harlow's mansion. 7 brides ran out screaming before a single week passed. The city whispered about curses, about violence, about things too dark to name. Then Evelyn Pierce arrived, broke, desperate, carrying her brother's death sentence in the form of a gambling debt, and became the 8th woman to cross that threshold. She had nothing to lose and nowhere else to go. What she found inside wasn't what the rumors promised. It was worse. It was better. It was the kind of truth that changes everything. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hit harder than it should have in late October, the kind of cold that worked its way through cheap fabric and settled into bones. Evelyn Pierce stood outside the wrought iron gates of the Harlow estate, staring up at the mansion that looked like it belonged in a different century, maybe a different country. Gothic windows. Stone walls dark with age and weather. The kind of place that made you believe in ghosts even if you'd never believed before. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't need to check it to know what it said. Marcus had been sending the same message for 3 days. They're coming for me. Please, Ev. Please. Her younger brother, 24 years old and somehow still making the kind of mistakes that got people killed. $75,000 to men who didn't accept payment plans or sob stories. Men who'd already sent photos of Marcus's apartment, ransacked, violated, a warning. The next photos would be of Marcus himself, and they wouldn't be warnings. Evelyn had spent 4 years working double shifts at Mercy General's hospice wing, wiping mouths and holding hands and watching people die with whatever dignity she could give them. She'd saved $11,000. It wasn't nearly enough. Then Lydia Carver, one of the old women in her care, had grabbed her wrist with surprising strength and whispered about Declan Harlow, about how he solved problems that couldn't be solved any other way, about how he required something in return, always, but he never broke his word. "You're young enough," Lydia had said, her eyes filmy with cataracts but somehow still sharp. Pretty enough in that plain way. He might consider it a contract, an arrangement. Lydia hadn't needed to spell it out. So here Evelyn stood, her clothes soaked through, her heart doing something arrhythmic in her chest. She'd called the number Lydia gave her. A man with a voice like gravel had answered, asked 3 questions, and told her to be at the gates at 8 p.m. She pressed the intercom button. Static crackled. Then, "Name." "Evelyn Pierce." "I have an appointment." Silence. Then the gates groaned open, smooth and mechanical despite their ancient appearance. The driveway curved through grounds that probably looked impressive in daylight. At night, in the rain, they just looked vast and empty. The mansion loomed larger as she approached, lights burning in only a few windows. The rest stood dark, watching. She climbed the stone steps. Before she could knock, the door opened. The man who stood there was not what she expected. Tall, yes, easily 6'3", but younger than the rumors suggested. Maybe 35, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie, no jacket. His eyes were gray, the color of the rain outside, and they assessed her the way a doctor might assess a wound. "Miss Pierce," his voice matched the one from the phone. "Come in." She stepped into a foyer that should have been grand but felt hollow instead. Marble floors, a staircase that split in 2 directions, paintings on the walls that probably cost more than her car. "You're Declan Harlow." It wasn't a question. "I am." He closed the door, shutting out the sound of rain. The silence that replaced it felt heavier. "You're here about your brother's debt." "Yes." "Marcus Pierce, 24, owes $75,000 to the Volkov syndicate. Interest accruing daily." He said it without consulting notes, without hesitation. "They'll kill him within the week. Probably less." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Can you help him?" "I can settle the debt. I can ensure his safety." Declan walked past her, deeper into the house, clearly expecting her to follow. "The question is whether you can pay the price." She followed him down a hallway lined with closed doors. "Lydia said you might want an arrangement." Lydia Carver talks too much. But there was something almost fond in his tone. Though in this case she wasn't wrong. He led her into a room that might have been a study, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. Leather chairs positioned near a fireplace where logs burned with heat that did nothing to warm the space. Declan gestured to a chair. Evelyn sat. He remained standing, one hand braced against the mantel, backlit by fire. "I assume you've heard the stories," he said. "Some of them. Then you know 7 women have come to this house as contracted brides. You know that none of them stayed longer than a week. You know the city believes I'm cursed, violent, or both." Evelyn kept her voice steady. "Are you? Violent?" Something flickered across his face, not quite amusement. "When necessary. Cursed?" He paused. "That depends on your definition." "Why did they leave?" "Because they discovered what the contract actually required. Because reality didn't match their expectations. Because—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "Because they couldn't handle the truth of my life." "Which is?" Instead of answering, he moved to the desk and picked up a paper. "The terms are simple. You'll live here as my wife for 1 year. During that time, you'll fulfill certain household duties. At the end of the year, your brother's debt will be cleared, and you'll receive an additional $50,000. You may leave at any time before then, but the debt will revert to your brother, and my assistance will be withdrawn." "Household duties," Evelyn repeated carefully. "Not what you're thinking." His voice went cold. "I'm not buying a prostitute, Miss Pierce. I'm buying a solution to a problem that's proven difficult to solve through conventional means." "What problem?" He studied her for a long moment. "Come with me." He left the study, and after a heartbeat of hesitation, Evelyn followed. They climbed the staircase, turned down another hallway. The house felt endless, rooms branching into more rooms, silence pressing down like a physical weight. Declan stopped outside a door. From beyond it came a sound, rhythmic, repetitive, thumping. "Before you agree to anything," Declan said quietly, "you need to understand what you're agreeing to." He opened the door. The room was large, painted in soft blues and greens. Thick carpet, shelves lined with toys organized by color and size, a small table with chairs, and in the corner, a child. A boy, maybe 4 years old, with dark curls and features that marked him unmistakably as Declan's son. He sat on the floor, rocking back and forth, his small fist striking the wall in a steady rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. He didn't look up when the door opened, didn't acknowledge their presence at all. "His name is Owen," Declan said. His voice had changed, something raw underneath the careful control. "He's 4 years old. He's autistic, nonverbal. He doesn't like to be touched. He doesn't make eye contact. He has sensory sensitivities that make the world unbearable for him most days. And he's the reason 7 women have walked out of this house." Evelyn stepped into the room slowly, instinctively lowering herself to the floor several feet from the boy. Owen continued rocking, continued hitting the wall. Up close, she could see his hand was red, probably sore. "Owen," Declan said softly, "we have a visitor." No response. The rocking didn't stop. "He won't acknowledge you," Declan continued. "He probably won't acknowledge you for days, maybe weeks. When he's overwhelmed, he hits himself, or walls, or furniture. He doesn't sleep through the night. He screams sometimes, not because he's hurt, but because something in his environment is wrong in ways I can't always identify. He needs routine, consistency, patience, and understanding that most people, even professionals, struggle to provide." Evelyn watched the boy, watched the rhythmic motion of his small body, the way his eyes stayed fixed on a point only he could see. "His mother?" she asked quietly. "Left when he was 6 months old, before the diagnosis, before—" Declan's voice went tight. "She said she couldn't do it. I haven't seen her since." "And the other women?" "I was honest with them, as I'm being honest with you." But honesty from a distance isn't the same as lived reality. One lasted 3 days before she said she couldn't handle the screaming. One lasted 6 days before she admitted she found him frightening. The others— He trailed off. The others had various reasons, but the result was the same. They left. Evelyn looked up at him. "So you need someone to help with Owen." "I need someone who won't run." Declan's gray eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something beneath the careful control. Exhaustion, grief, desperate hope he was trying to hide. "I need someone who can look at my son and not see a problem to be solved or a burden to be endured. I need—" Owen screamed. It wasn't a cry of pain, it was higher, sharper, the sound of a nervous system in overload. His rocking intensified. His hand struck the wall harder. Declan moved immediately, but carefully. He didn't grab the boy, didn't try to stop him. Instead, he knelt a few feet away and began speaking in a low, steady voice. Owen, you're safe. You're okay. The sound will stop. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. The counting continued. The screaming didn't stop, but it shifted slightly, became less sharp. Owen's rocking slowed by increments. Evelyn stayed where she was, watching father and son, understanding clicking into place. This was the truth the rumors had never touched. Not violence, not cruelty, just a man trying to raise a child most people wouldn't even try to understand, and failing to find anyone who would stay to help him do it. 4, 5, 6. Declan kept counting. Evelyn found herself counting too, barely a whisper. Owen's hand stopped hitting the wall. His rocking slowed. The screaming faded to a whimper, then to silence. Declan stayed kneeling, didn't reach for his son, just remained nearby, present but not demanding. After several long minutes, Owen's body relaxed slightly. His eyes, dark like his father's but somehow more distant, shifted. For a fraction of a second they landed on Evelyn, then away. But it was something. You should go, Declan said quietly, not looking at her. Think about what you've seen. If you want to proceed, call the number again. If not, I'll do it. Declan's head turned sharply. You haven't thought about it. I don't need to. Miss Pierce, Evelyn. She stood up slowly, careful not to make sudden movements. If I'm going to be your wife, you should call me Evelyn. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. I've spent 4 years working hospice. She met his eyes steadily. I've dealt with dementia patients who didn't recognize their own children. I've dealt with people in pain so severe they begged me to let them die. I've dealt with family members who screamed at me, hit me, blamed me for things I couldn't control. I'm not afraid of hard. I'm not afraid of overwhelming, and I'm not afraid of your son. Something shifted in Declan's expression, surprise maybe, or disbelief. The other women said similar things. The other women didn't mean it. Evelyn glanced at Owen, who had resumed a gentler rocking, his crisis past for now. I do. Declan stood slowly. Why? Because Marcus is my brother, and I won't let him die. Because I need the money. Because... She paused. Because I've spent years taking care of people nobody else wants to take care of. This isn't that different. It's extremely different. Maybe. She shrugged. But I'm still saying yes. He studied her for a long moment. Then he walked past her, back toward the door. Come downstairs. We'll discuss the details. Back in the study, Declan poured himself something amber from a crystal decanter. He didn't offer her any. The contract is legally binding, he said. 1 year. You'll have your own room, your own space. I won't make demands of that nature. You keep saying that. I believe you. I say it because I want it clear. This is a business arrangement, Miss Pierce, Evelyn. He corrected himself. I'm not looking for romance. I'm not looking for companionship. I'm looking for stability for my son. Understood. You'll need to learn Owen's routines, his triggers, what calms him, what sets him off. It's not intuitive. It's exhausting. There will be days you want to leave. There will be days I won't. He took a drink. You're very confident. I'm very desperate. There's a difference, but the result's the same. Something almost like a smile touched his mouth, then vanished. I'll have the papers drawn up tonight. You can move in tomorrow if you're willing to proceed that quickly. I'll settle your brother's debt immediately. The Volkovs will receive full payment plus interest by midnight. Tomorrow, Evelyn repeated. The speed of it should have frightened her. It didn't. Okay. Okay. He set down his glass. I'll have someone drive you home. Pack whatever you need. The room you'll occupy is fully furnished, but if there are personal items, I don't have much. Then this should be a simple transition. Nothing about this was simple, but Evelyn didn't say so. A man appeared in the doorway, the same one who'd answered the intercom, she realized. Older, maybe 60, with a face that suggested he'd seen everything worth seeing and wasn't impressed by any of it. This is James, Declan said. He manages the house. He'll drive you home. James nodded to her. Miss. Evelyn followed him out. At the door, she paused and looked back. Declan stood in the study doorway, backlit again, his expression unreadable. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. His voice was quiet. You haven't spent a night here. See you tomorrow, then. She thought he might respond, but he just turned away, disappearing back into the study. James drove her home in silence. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflecting the city lights in fractured patterns. Evelyn's apartment was in a part of town where the buildings leaned and the streetlights flickered, where locks were suggestions and hope was something you couldn't afford to keep. You know what you're doing? James asked as they pulled up outside her building. No, Evelyn admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Mr. Harlow's not what people think. I'm starting to realize that. The boy, though, James paused. He's a good kid. Different, but good. Just so you know. I appreciate that. She got out. James waited until she was inside before driving away. Marcus was in her apartment, pacing, frantic. Where the hell have you been? They came by again, Ev. They said, it's handled. He stopped. What? Your debt. It's handled. It'll be paid tomorrow. How? His eyes went wide. Evelyn, what did you do? What I had to. She moved past him, into her tiny bedroom, and pulled out the battered suitcase from under her bed. I need you to leave the city for a while. Stay with Aunt Carol upstate. Don't come back until I tell you it's safe. Evelyn? Marcus. She turned to face him. I fixed your mistake. The least you can do is not argue with me about how. His face crumpled. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I never meant. I know. And she did. Marcus never meant anything. He just did it anyway. It's okay. Just go. He left an hour later, still apologizing, still promising to do better. Evelyn watched him go and felt nothing except a distant kind of relief. She packed quickly. Clothes, a few books, a photo of their parents, dead now for 8 years. She didn't have jewelry, didn't have valuables. Her whole life fit into one suitcase and a backpack. She tried to sleep but couldn't. At 3 a.m., she gave up and sat by the window, watching the street below. A drunk stumbled past. A couple argued in Spanish. A dog barked, abandoned or lost or both. This was her life. Had been her life. Tomorrow, it would be something else. She didn't know if that was better or worse. She just knew it was necessary. When dawn broke gray and cold, she was already dressed, already waiting. James arrived at 9 sharp. He took her suitcase without comment and loaded it into the same black car from the night before. The drive felt longer in daylight. The city gave way to suburbs, suburbs gave way to estates, estates gave way to the sprawling grounds of the Harlow mansion. In the sun, it looked less Gothic, more simply old, beautiful in the way ancient things are beautiful, worn by time and weather into something severe. Declan met her at the door. He'd shaved, she noticed, changed into fresh clothes. He looked less exhausted, though the shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept any better than she had. Your room is upstairs, he said without preamble. 2nd floor, east wing. James will show you. We'll discuss Owen's routine after you've settled in. Where is Owen? In his playroom. Declan hesitated. He had a difficult night. He's recovering. Evelyn nodded. James led her upstairs down a hallway that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old wood. The room he showed her to was larger than her entire apartment had been. 4-poster bed, windows overlooking the grounds, an attached bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. There's a bell pull if you need anything, James said, gesturing to a cord near the bed. Dinner is at 7. Mr. Harlow prefers punctuality. Thank you. He left her alone. Evelyn unpacked slowly, hanging her cheap clothes in a closet designed for furs and gowns. She put the photo of her parents on the nightstand, looked at herself in the mirror, plain, tired, unremarkable, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. A knock on the door. Come in. Declan entered. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't used to being in this part of the house. I wanted to go over Owen's schedule. His therapist comes 3 times a week. his occupational therapist twice a week. He has specific dietary requirements, no artificial dyes, no processed sugars. He eats at the same times every day. Routine is essential. Any disruption can trigger. He stopped. You saw what it can trigger. I understand. He wakes at 6, sometimes earlier if he's had a bad night. He doesn't call out or cry. He just gets up. You'll need to be aware of that. Okay? He has pressure preferences, weighted blankets, deep pressure touch when he'll tolerate it, which isn't often. Light touch is painful for him. Certain sounds, blenders, vacuums, loud music cause immediate distress. Certain textures are intolerable. Tags in clothing, seams in socks. He'll strip naked if something feels wrong. Evelyn listened, cataloging each detail. He communicates through pointing, sometimes through pictures. We're trying to teach him sign language, but progress is slow. When he's frustrated, he hits himself. When he's overwhelmed, he screams. When he's content, Declan's voice softened slightly. When he's content, he hums. It's the only sound he makes voluntarily. Can I meet him? Evelyn asked. Officially, I mean. Declan looked uncertain. He's not good with new people. I know, but I'm here now. The longer we wait, the harder the transition might be. He considered this, then nodded. Come with me. They walked to Owen's playroom. Declan opened the door carefully, announcing their presence before entering. Owen, it's Dad. I'm coming in. Evelyn is with me. Owen sat in the same corner as last night, this time lining up blocks by color. He didn't look up. Declan lowered himself to the floor at a respectful distance. After a moment, Evelyn did the same. Owen, Declan said gently, this is Evelyn. She's going to be staying with us. He paused. She's here to help. No response. The blocks continued their ordered progression. Evelyn didn't try to speak to Owen, didn't try to engage him. She just sat, quiet, watching him work. The blocks formed a pattern, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, over and over, precise, beautiful in its exactness. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Owen's hand reached for a yellow block that wasn't there. His pattern had depleted the yellows. His hand hovered, searching. Slowly, carefully, Evelyn picked up a yellow block from the pile between them. She didn't hand it to him. She just set it down within his reach. Owen's hand found it, placed it in the pattern, continued building. Declan was staring at her. She could feel it. Declan started, then stopped. He doesn't usually tolerate that. Interference with his patterns. I didn't interfere. I helped him continue. Still. They sat for another few minutes. Then Declan stood carefully. We should let him be. Evelyn stood too. At the door she looked back. Owen was still building, still humming softly. A sound like contentment, like peace. In the hallway, Declan leaned against the wall, something close to shock on his face. What? Evelyn asked. Nothing. It's just... He shook his head. The third bride made it 4 days. On the second day, she tried to hug him. He screamed for an hour. The fifth bride kept trying to make him look at her. Called his name over and over. He started hitting himself. I'm not them. No. Declan studied her. You're not. Something in his tone made her uncomfortable. Not threatened, just aware suddenly of how closely he was looking, how much weight he was placing on her actions. I should let you settle in, he said finally. Dinner at 7. It's just the two of us. Owen eats earlier separately. He can't tolerate the dining room. Okay. He walked away, leaving her in the hallway that already felt less foreign than it had that morning. Evelyn spent the afternoon exploring the parts of the house she could access. It was enormous, rooms that hadn't been used in years, furniture covered in sheets, portraits of Harlow's long dead staring down from walls. She found a library that took her breath away, shelves reaching to a ceiling painted with clouds and angels. She found a conservatory with plants growing wild, untended. She found a pool, emptied for the season, leaves collecting in its deep end. She found Owen's room again, stood outside, listening to the humming from within. At 6:30, she changed into the nicest thing she owned, a dress that had been nice 5 years ago and was now just tired. She went downstairs to the dining room she'd been told about. Declan was already there, standing by the window, a glass in his hand. He'd changed too. into dark slacks and a crisp shirt, though he'd left the collar open, no tie. "You found it," he said unnecessarily. "The house isn't that confusing." "It is, actually, but you're clearly better at navigation than I gave you credit for." They sat. James served food that Evelyn couldn't even name. Something French, probably, plated like art. She ate carefully, aware of Declan watching her from across the table. "You worked in hospice," he said finally. "For 4 years. Why?" "Needed a job. They were hiring." "Most people can't handle hospice work for 4 months, let alone 4 years. Evelyn shrugged. "Most people don't like being around death. I don't mind it. Death's honest. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not." "That's a dark philosophy." "Maybe, but I've found it's true." He took a drink. "What about your parents?" "Dead. 8 years." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We weren't close." "And your brother?" "You already know about Marcus. You know everything about Marcus, probably." "I know he owes money. I know he has a gambling problem. I don't know why you're willing to sacrifice a year of your life for him." "He's my brother." As if that explained everything. Maybe it did. Declan set down his glass. "I need you to understand something. If you leave, when you leave, statistically speaking, it won't just affect me, it'll affect Owen. He's already been abandoned by more people than a 4-year-old should have to process. Every woman who walks out of this house reinforces the idea that he's too much, too difficult, too broken. He's not broken. I know that, you know that, but the world doesn't, and every departure teaches him that lesson again. So you need me to stay. I need you to be honest about whether you can. Not today, not next week. But when it's month 3 and he's been screaming for 2 hours and you haven't slept in days and you're questioning every choice that brought you here, can you stay then?" Evelyn met his eyes. "I don't know. How could I know? But I can promise you this. I won't leave on a whim. I won't leave because it's hard. If I leave, it'll be because there's genuinely no other option, and I'll give you warning. I won't disappear in the night like the others did." "They didn't disappear. They just ran. I know. I read the implication." She paused. "I'm not them, Declan. I keep saying that. Eventually you're going to have to believe me." Something shifted in his expression. A crack in the careful control. "I want to." "Then do." They finished dinner in silence. James cleared the plates. Declan poured himself another drink. "Owen will be awake early," he said. "You don't need to get up with him. I'm used to it." "I'll get up with him." "Evelyn? I'm here to help. Let me help." He looked like he wanted to argue, then nodded instead. 6 a.m., sometimes 5:30 if it's been a bad night. "I'll be ready." She went upstairs, lay in the enormous bed in the enormous room and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled her under. She woke to darkness and silence. Her phone said 5:47 a.m. From down the hall, she heard movement, small feet, a door opening. Evelyn got up, pulled on clothes, and went to find Owen. Owen stood in the hallway outside his room, one hand pressed flat against the wall, his small body swaying slightly. He wore pajamas with the tags already cut out, feet bare on the cold floor. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at something invisible. Evelyn approached slowly, staying to his left where he could see her in his peripheral vision without having to turn his head. She'd learned that much from watching Declan. Never surprise him, never force eye contact, never invade his space without warning. "Owen?" she said quietly. "It's Evelyn. Good morning." No response. The swaying continued. She waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Then she moved past him, not toward him, heading in the direction of what she assumed was the kitchen. After a moment, she heard the soft pad of feet behind her. The kitchen was massive, all commercial-grade appliances and marble counters that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Declan was already there, measuring something into a specific bowl. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face before he masked it. "You're up." "I heard him moving." Evelyn glanced back. Owen had followed her into the kitchen but stopped at the threshold, his hand finding the doorframe. "What's his breakfast routine?" "Specific." Declan gestured to the items he'd laid out. Oatmeal, made with almond milk, exactly 3/4 cup of blueberries, 1 tablespoon of honey. No variation. The bowl has to be blue. The spoon has to be the small one with the rubber grip. He eats at the table by the window, Same chair every time. Show me. Declan prepared the oatmeal while Evelyn watched, noting every measurement, every movement. When it was ready, he placed it on the table by the window. The eastern window, she noticed, where morning light came in soft rather than harsh. Owen, Declan said. Breakfast is ready. Owen moved from the door frame to the table, his path precise, avoiding certain floor tiles. He climbed into his chair without looking at the food, his hands immediately going to the table's edge, fingers tapping a rhythm only he could hear. Declan sat across from him, not eating, just present. You can eat, Owen. It's okay. Owen's hands stopped tapping. He picked up the spoon, examined it briefly, then began to eat with mechanical precision. 5 bites. Pause. 5 bites. Pause. Evelyn poured herself coffee from a pot that James must have started before anyone else was awake. She leaned against the counter, watching father and son, this ritual they'd built together. He'll eat exactly half, Declan said without looking at her. Then he'll push the bowl away. Don't try to make him finish. He'll finish the rest at mid-morning snack, same time every day. What time? 9:30? Exactly. Owen ate his counted bites, then pushed the bowl away, exactly as predicted. He climbed down from the chair and went to the refrigerator, standing in front of it, waiting. Declan opened it, revealing a shelf at Owen's eye level, stocked with juice boxes. Apple, all the same brand. Owen took one, carried it back to his chair, and began drinking in the same measured way he'd eaten. His therapist arrives at 10 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Declan said. Her name is Dr. Sarah Chen. She's been working with him for 2 years. She's good, patient. Owen tolerates her better than most people. What does she work on? Communication, emotional regulation, life skills. The sessions are in his playroom. She brings visual schedules, picture cards. Sometimes they make progress, sometimes... He stopped. Sometimes Owen spends the entire hour stimming and won't engage at all. Stimming? Self-stimulating behavior, the rocking, the hand flapping, the humming. It helps him regulate his nervous system. Declan's voice was clinical, like he'd explained this 100 times. Maybe he had. It's not bad. It's necessary for him. But people see it and think something's wrong. Something is wrong, Evelyn said carefully. Just not the way they think. Declan looked at her sharply, then seemed to realize she wasn't criticizing. No, not the way they think. Owen finished his juice box, set it down with the straw facing exactly north, and left the kitchen. They heard his feet on the stairs, heading back up. He'll go to his playroom now, Declan said. He'll play, though play isn't quite the right word. He'll organize things, build patterns. He finds comfort in order. Don't we all? Not like this. Declan stood collecting Owen's dishes. For Owen, disorder isn't uncomfortable. It's painful, physically painful. His brain processes sensory input differently than ours. What we can ignore, he can't. What we find mildly annoying, he finds unbearable. Evelyn rinsed her coffee cup. You've explained this before, to the other women. Yes. How did they react? They said they understood. They promised patience. They lasted less than a week. He turned to face her. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to prepare you for the reality that understanding intellectually and living with daily are completely different things. I know that. Do you? Because knowing something and accepting it at 3 a.m. when he's been screaming for 2 hours and you can't figure out why and you're so tired you can't remember your own name, those are different kinds of knowledge. You do it every day. I'm his father. I don't have a choice. You think I do? Something passed between them. Not quite understanding, but maybe the beginning of it. Declan looked away first. I have work, he said. Business calls. James will be here if you need anything. Owen's schedule is on the refrigerator. Don't deviate from it unless absolutely necessary. Where do you work? I have an office in the East Wing. I'll be there most of the day. He paused at the doorway. Thank you for getting up with him. Then he was gone, leaving Evelyn alone in the too large kitchen with its too expensive appliances and its careful routines built around a 4-year-old boy who lived in a different world than everyone else. She found the schedule on the refrigerator, printed in neat columns. 6 a.m. wake, 6:15 breakfast, 7 a.m. free play. 9:30 snack. 10 a.m. therapy, MWF. 11:30 pre-lunch routine, noon lunch, 1 p.m. quiet time. 3 p.m. occupational therapy, teeth. 4 p.m. outdoor time, weather permitting. 5:30 dinner, 6:30 bath. 7 p.m. bedtime routine. 7:30 sleep, every day the same, every day precise. Evelyn climbed the stairs to Owen's playroom. The door was open. Declan's rule, she'd learned, always open so Owen never felt trapped. She stood in the doorway watching. Owen had taken out the blocks again, building the same color pattern as yesterday. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. His small hands moved with surprising dexterity, each block placed exactly where it needed to be. She didn't enter, just watched. After 10 minutes, she continued down the hallway, exploring the rooms she hadn't seen yet. Most were closed, furniture draped in sheets. One room, though, had been cleared out entirely, leaving just bare walls and hardwood floors. She found herself wondering what it had been before, what it could be now. At 9:30, she returned to the kitchen. James was there, preparing Owen's snack. Half the oatmeal from breakfast, reheated to a specific temperature, same blue bowl, same rubber grip spoon. "Mr. Harlow mentioned you'd want to learn the routines," James said without preamble. "This is mid-morning snack, same every day. Temperature matters. Too hot, he won't touch it. Too cold, same thing. You're aiming for room temperature plus about 10 degrees. How do you measure that?" "Thermometer? Over there." He pointed to a drawer that, when opened, revealed multiple food thermometers, measuring cups in graduated sizes, timers, and other tools of precision. "Mr. Harlow doesn't leave anything to chance when it comes to Owen." "I'm starting to see that." James carried the bowl upstairs. Evelyn followed. In Owen's playroom, James set the bowl on the small table and stepped back. "Owen, snack time." Owen stopped building. He came to the table, sat in the designated chair, and began eating the same way he had at breakfast. 5 bites. Pause. 5 bites. Pause. "He'll finish it all this time," James said quietly. "Then he'll want water. Specific cup, room temperature, filled exactly to the line on the inside. Don't ask me why that line. Mr. Harlow's tried other cups. Owen won't drink from them." When Owen finished eating, James produced the required cup, filled to the mysterious but apparently crucial line. Owen drank, set the cup down, and returned to his blocks without acknowledging either adult's presence. "That's normal?" Evelyn asked as they left the room. "That's Owen." James headed back downstairs. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Most don't." "Most didn't try." James glanced at her, something assessing in his expression. "We'll see." At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. James answered it, admitting a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a bag full of what looked like teaching materials. "Dr. Chen?" Evelyn assumed. "You must be Evelyn," the woman said, extending her hand. "Declan called me this morning, mentioned you'd be staying. I'm Sarah Chen." "Nice to meet you." "How's he doing today?" Sarah asked, directing the question to both Evelyn and James. "Good morning," James reported. "Ate breakfast normally. Followed routine. No incidents." Sarah nodded, making a note on her tablet. "That's good. Monday mornings can be rough after the weekend disruption." She turned to Evelyn. "You're welcome to observe the session if you'd like. Some people find it helpful to see how I work with him." "I'd appreciate that." They went upstairs together. Sarah knocked on Owen's doorframe before entering, a courtesy Evelyn noticed and catalogued. "Owen, it's Dr. Chen. I'm coming in for our session." Owen didn't look up from his blocks, but his hands stilled briefly, acknowledgement of a sort. Sarah set up her materials on the floor at a respectful distance. Picture cards, a visual schedule board, objects of different textures. She began the session not by trying to engage Owen directly, but by narrating her own actions. "I'm taking out the schedule board. First we'll do matching, then feelings cards, then sensory time. You can look at the schedule whenever you want." Owen continued with his blocks. Sarah didn't push. She simply laid out matching cards, images of objects that Owen needed to pair with identical images. Then she waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Evelyn felt the urge to prompt him, to hurry things along, but she stayed quiet, watching Sarah's patient stillness. Finally, Owen's hand reached out. He took one card, studied it, placed it on top of its match. Then another. Then another. The process was slow, methodical, but he was engaging. "Good matching, Owen," Sarah said, her voice neutral, not overly praising. "You found all the pairs." Next came feelings cards, faces showing different emotions. Sarah held one up. "This person is happy. Can you show me happy?" Owen didn't respond. Sarah waited, then moved to the next card. "This person is sad. Can you show me sad?" Still nothing. Sarah continued through the deck without showing frustration or disappointment. When she finished, she put the cards away and brought out a box of textured items. Smooth stones, rough bark, soft fabric, bumpy rubber. "Sensory exploration time," she announced. "You can touch what you want. You don't have to touch anything you don't want to." Owen's hand went immediately to the smooth stones. He picked one up, rubbed it between his fingers, then pressed it against his cheek. His eyes closed briefly. Pleasure, maybe, or just the satisfaction of texture meeting expectation. The session continued like this for an hour, slow, patient, requiring no eye contact, no forced interaction, just creating opportunities for engagement and accepting whatever level Owen could manage that day. When it ended, Sarah packed up her materials. In the hallway, she turned to Evelyn. "He did well today. Some days he doesn't engage at all. Some days he screams through the whole session. You take what you can get." "Does he make progress?" Evelyn asked. "Yes, slower than neurotypical children and in different ways, but yes. 6 months ago, he wouldn't have touched the matching cards at all. A year ago, he couldn't tolerate my presence in the room." Sarah paused. "The question isn't whether he'll ever be normal. He won't, and that's okay. The question is whether he can learn to navigate a world that isn't built for brains like his. And the answer to that is maybe, with enough support, enough patience, enough people willing to meet him where he is instead of demanding he come to where they are." Declan mentioned 7 other women tried this, tried to help. They tried to fix him. That's different. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Owen doesn't need fixing. He needs understanding. He needs accommodation. He needs people who won't give up when it gets hard. From what Declan told me about you, maybe you're the one who gets that. I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. That's all any of us can do. Sarah headed for the stairs. "I'll be back Wednesday. Call if there are any major changes or concerns." After she left, Evelyn found herself back in Owen's playroom doorway. He'd returned to his blocks, rebuilding the pattern he'd finished earlier. The same pattern, over and over. "Do you ever get bored?" she asked, not expecting an answer. "Building the same thing every time?" Owen didn't respond, but his humming grew slightly louder. That sound Declan had called contentment. Maybe boredom was a neurotypical concept. Maybe for Owen, the pattern wasn't repetitive. Maybe it was meditative, necessary, the thing that made the overwhelming world manageable. At 11:30, Evelyn helped James prepare lunch. Grilled cheese sandwich, cut diagonally, never horizontally, with the crust removed. Apple slices, exactly 8 of them. Carrot sticks, exactly 6. Ranch dressing in a small cup for dipping, filled to a specific line. "Everything's exact," she observed. "Everything," James confirmed. "Took Mr. Harlow months to figure out what Owen would eat consistently. Used to be the boy would go days refusing food because something was wrong. Wrong plate, wrong arrangement, wrong temperature. Nearly ended up in the hospital twice. Now we know the rules. We follow them." They brought lunch to Owen's room. He ate at the same small table, same methodical pace. When he finished exactly half the sandwich and 5 of the 8 apple slices, he pushed the plate away. "He'll eat the rest at afternoon snack," James said. 3 o'clock. The afternoon followed the same careful pattern. Quiet time, where Owen retreated to his room and engaged in what Declan had called stimming, rocking, hand-flapping, humming. Evelyn didn't disturb him, just checked occasionally to make sure he was safe. At 3, the occupational therapist arrived, a young man named Marcus, which made Evelyn flinch, thinking of her brother. This Marcus was different, though. Calm, patient, focused entirely on helping Owen develop fine motor skills and sensory integration. She watched another hour-long session, this one involving putting pegs in boards, stringing beads, manipulating Play-Doh. Owen engaged more with Marcus than he had with Sarah, his hands working the materials with evident satisfaction. "He's tactile," Marcus explained afterward. "Physical activities ground him. They give his sensory system something to process that feels good instead of overwhelming. At 4, Declan emerged from wherever he'd been working and announced it was outdoor time. Owen had a specific routine for this too, certain shoes that felt right, a specific jacket even though the weather didn't require one, a specific path around the grounds that never varied. Evelyn walked with them, hanging back as Declan guided Owen through the familiar route. They circled the garden 3 times, Owen counting under his breath, numbers barely audible, then stopped at a bench where Owen sat and stared at the sky for exactly 10 minutes. "He's watching clouds," Declan said quietly, "or light patterns, or something we can't perceive. I've never been sure. Does it matter? No? As long as he's calm, as long as he's content, no, it doesn't matter." They returned inside as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. Dinner preparation began. Another precise meal, another specific arrangement. Owen ate in the kitchen again, same chair, same routine. At 6:30, Declan took Owen upstairs for bath time. Evelyn heard water running, heard Declan's low voice narrating every step. "I'm turning on the water. I'm checking the temperature. I'm adding the soap you like. You can get in when you're ready." She found herself in the library, overwhelmed by the day's careful choreography. Every moment structured, every action predetermined. It was exhausting just watching, let alone maintaining. Declan found her there an hour later, after Owen was asleep. He looked drained. The careful composure from this morning cracked around the edges. "First day surviving?" he asked, pouring himself a drink from a decanter on the desk. "Surviving? It's a lot." "It is." Evelyn closed the book she'd been pretending to read. "But it's manageable. The routine helps, actually, knowing what to expect. Until the routine gets disrupted." He sat in the chair across from hers. Then everything falls apart. A fire alarm, a power outage, construction noise from down the street, anything unexpected, and Owen can spiral for days. Has that happened recently? Last month, storm knocked out power for 6 hours. Owen didn't sleep for 3 days afterward. By the end, I was hallucinating from exhaustion. He took a drink. That's when the 6th bride left. She said she couldn't take the uncertainty, couldn't live in a house where a storm could destroy everyone's peace for days. "Where do the brides usually sleep?" Evelyn asked. "I mean, the room you gave me is far from Owen's room. I barely heard him this morning." "That's intentional. You need sleep to function. Owen wakes multiple times most nights. I handle it." You can't handle everything alone. I've been doing it for 3 years. And you look like hell because of it." The words came out harsher than she meant them. Declan's eyebrows rose, surprise flickering across his face, before something almost like amusement replaced it. "James says the same thing, though with more tact." "I'm not here to be tactful. I'm here to help." "Let me help." "You've been here one day." "So?" "I learned the routines. I watched the sessions. I can handle nighttime wake-ups while you actually sleep." She leaned forward. "You hired me to provide stability for Owen. I can't do that if I'm just a decoration who watches from the sidelines." Declan studied her, something shifting behind his eyes. "The other women said similar things. Then the first nighttime meltdown happened, and they changed their minds." "I'm not them." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." He was quiet for a long moment, his drink forgotten in his hand. "When Owen was born, I thought I knew what fatherhood would be. I thought I'd teach him to throw a ball, read him stories, watch him grow into a person who'd talk to me, argue with me, eventually hate me like teenagers hate their parents. Normal milestones, normal rebellion, normal life." "But he's not normal." "No, and for a long time I mourned that. Grieved the child I'd expected and didn't get. Felt guilty for grieving because he's not dead, he's right here, alive and real, and mine." His voice roughened. "Then I realized the problem wasn't Owen. The problem was my expectations. Once I let go of normal, once I stopped trying to fit him into a box he'd never fit in, once I started seeing him instead of what he wasn't, everything changed." "Not everyone can do that," Evelyn said quietly. "No, his mother couldn't. The 7 brides couldn't. Most of the world can't." He looked at her directly. "Can you?" "I don't know him well enough yet to answer that honestly, but I can tell you this. I don't care about normal. I spent 4 years watching people die. You know what I learned? There's no such thing as normal. Everyone's coping with something. Everyone's carrying damage. Owen's is just more visible than most people's. That's a cynical view. It's a realistic one. Declan finished his drink. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Occupational therapy at 3. Otherwise, same routine. If you want to take the morning shift, wake up, breakfast, I'll handle the night. Deal. He stood. Get some sleep. 6 a.m. comes early. Declan? He turned. Thank you for giving me this chance, for trusting me with him. Something vulnerable flickered across his face, gone before she could name it. Don't thank me yet. You've had one good day. We'll see how you feel after a bad one. He left her alone in the library, surrounded by books she hadn't chosen, and a life she'd agreed to without fully understanding what it would require. She went upstairs eventually, exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical effort. In her room, she lay in the too large bed and thought about Owen, about his humming, his careful patterns, his world of precision and routine. She thought about Declan, raising that child alone, learning his language, building a life around needs most people couldn't even comprehend. She thought about herself, about why she'd really said yes to this arrangement. The debt, yes. Marcus's life, yes. But also, maybe, the fact that she'd spent so long being invisible, caring for people who didn't remember her name the next day, that the idea of being essential, of being necessary, held more appeal than she wanted to admit. Sleep took her under, still thinking, still trying to understand what she'd walked into and whether she'd survive it. She woke at 5:45 to the sound of small feet in the hallway. This time, she was faster getting dressed, reaching Owen before he'd made it halfway to the stairs. Morning, Owen, she said quietly. I'm going to walk to the kitchen. You can follow if you want. He did. In the kitchen, she prepared his breakfast exactly as Declan had shown her, measuring with precision, checking temperatures, arranging everything in its designated place. When she set it on the table, Owen climbed into his chair and began eating his counted bites. Declan appeared in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. You did the breakfast routine. I watched. I learned. He stopped. That's good. They sat in silence while Owen ate. When he finished his half and pushed the bowl away, Declan opened the refrigerator for the juice box without being asked, everything flowing like clockwork, like choreography. I have meetings today, Declan said as Owen drank. Video calls, mostly. I'll be in my office until 3. We'll manage. If there's a problem, I'll get you, I know. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but didn't. Owen finished his juice, arranged the box just so, and headed back upstairs to his playroom. The morning passed in now familiar patterns. Free play. Snack. Therapy session with Sarah, who seemed pleased to see Evelyn taking notes on her techniques. Lunch. Quiet time. At 2:30, Evelyn went to find Declan. His office was exactly what she'd expected. Leather and wood, computers and phones, the command center for whatever business dealings kept them housed and fed. He was on a video call, speaking in a language she didn't recognize, Russian maybe. His tone was hard, nothing like the gentle voice he used with Owen. She waited in the doorway until he finished. When he looked up, something in his expression reminded her that this man, this patient father, was also the person the city called dangerous. The person whose name alone settled debts and silenced arguments. Problem? He asked. No, just wanted to tell you Owen's fine, ready for occupational therapy. You didn't need to report that. Didn't need to, wanted to. She hesitated. What language was that? Russian. Business partners don't all speak English. What kind of business? His eyes were steady on hers. The kind that pays for therapists and specialized food, and a house large enough that Owen can have his own space when the world gets too loud. The kind that settles debts for people who can't settle them themselves. The kind people call criminal. People call lots of things criminal when they don't understand how the world actually works. He stood. Does it bother you, what I do? Should it? Most people think it should. Evelyn considered this. My brother gambled himself into a debt he couldn't pay. Your business settled it. I'm not in a position to judge what's criminal and what's necessary. That's a convenient philosophy. It's an honest one. Something almost like respect flickered in his expression. Marcus is here for Owen's session. I'll handle it today. You should rest. I'm not tired. Evelyn? His voice was patient. Rest while you can. Trust me on this. She did rest, though sleep didn't come. Instead, she lay in her room listening to the house, its creaks and sighs, the distant sound of voices from Owen's therapy session, the hum of expensive heating systems. At 5, she went downstairs to help James with dinner preparation. They worked in comfortable silence, the older man showing her small details she'd missed the day before, how Owen preferred his vegetables cut in specific shapes, how the plate needed to be set on the table before he entered the room, never after. You're doing well, James said as they finished. Considering. Considering what? Considering most people would have run by now. It's been 2 days. Exactly. He carried Owen's plate to the table. The third bride lasted 3 days. The seventh barely made it to 48 hours. You're approaching the danger zone. There's a danger zone? Day 3. That's when the novelty wears off and the reality sets in, when the lack of sleep catches up. When you realize this isn't a temporary situation you're observing, it's your life now. He glanced at her. Day 3 breaks most people. Good thing I'm not most people. Let's hope not. Dinner, bath time, bedtime routine, all passed without incident. Owen went to sleep at his designated time, and Evelyn found herself in the library again, drawn to its quiet and its thousands of stories that weren't her own. Declan joined her around 9, his tie loosened, exhaustion clear in the set of his shoulders. Day 2, he said. Still here. Still here. Tomorrow's the test. James warned me about day 3. James talks too much, but there was affection in his tone. He's right, though. Day 3 is when it becomes real, when the routine stops feeling manageable and starts feeling like a prison. When you realize there's no break, no pause, no day off. I worked hospice. I know about no days off. This is different. So you keep saying. He poured himself a drink, offered her one. She accepted this time, the amber liquid burning down her throat. Why did you really say yes? Declan asked. The truth, not the convenient answer. Evelyn swirled her glass. Because I was tired of being invisible. Because for 4 years, I took care of people who forgot me the moment I left the room. Because Marcus needed saving, yes, but also because I needed... She stopped. I needed to matter to someone, really matter. Does that make me selfish? It makes you human. He sat in the chair opposite. I said yes to this arrangement for similar reasons. Not because I can't afford professional help. I can. But professionals go home at the end of their shift. They don't love Owen. They don't see him as anything more than a job. I needed someone to stay, Evelyn finished. Yes. They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the house settling around them. Outside, wind picked up, rattling windows. Storm coming, Declan said, tension immediately entering his voice. Is that a problem? Depends on how loud it gets. If there's thunder, he set down his glass. We might have a difficult night, then we'll handle it. You keep saying we, because that's what this is now, isn't it? We. She met his eyes. I'm not a guest, Declan. I'm not a temporary solution. I signed the contract. I'm here. Stop waiting for me to run. I'm not... Thunder rolled, distant but distinct. Declan was on his feet immediately. I need to check on Owen. Evelyn followed him upstairs. Owen's room was dark, the boy asleep in his bed, his weighted blanket pulled up exactly to his chin. He looked peaceful, unaware of the approaching storm. Sometimes he sleeps through it, Declan whispered. Sometimes... Lightning flashed. Thunder followed, closer now. Owen's eyes snapped open. For a moment, he just stared at the ceiling. Then his mouth opened, and the screaming started. It wasn't crying. It was raw sound, terror and pain and overload, all compressed into one continuous shriek that seemed to fill the entire house. Declan moved into the room, but not to Owen. To the window, closing the curtains, blocking the lightning. He switched on a small lamp, filling the room with steady, predictable light. Owen, he said, his voice calm despite the screaming. You're safe. It's just noise. I'm here. You're okay. The screaming continued. Owen began rocking violently, his hands going to his head, pulling at his hair. Evelyn watched from the doorway, her heart hammering but her mind surprisingly clear. This was the reality check, the moment meant to break her. She stepped into the room. "What can I do?" she asked Declan, raising her voice to be heard. "Nothing, just—" Thunder crashed again, loud enough to shake the windows. Owen's screaming intensified, his rocking becoming more violent. "Just stay back. When he's like this, he can't process anything. Any input just makes it worse." So Evelyn stayed back. She didn't try to comfort Owen, didn't try to stop the screaming. She just stood there, present but not demanding, waiting. The storm raged for 20 minutes. Owen screamed for 19 of them. When the thunder finally moved farther away, the screaming gradually subsided to whimpering, then to harsh breathing, then to silence. Owen collapsed back onto his bed, his small body trembling, his eyes still wide and unseeing. Declan sat on the floor near the bed, his own body shaking slightly. "Bad one," he said, his voice rough. "Not the worst, but bad." "Does he need anything?" "Time. Space. He'll sleep eventually, or he won't, and we'll sit with him until morning." "Then we sit." Declan looked at her, something raw in his expression. "You're still here. Where else would I be?" "Running, packing, calling for a car to take you back to the city." "I told you, I'm not them." They sat in silence, watching Owen's breathing even out, watching the trembling slowly fade. An hour passed, then two. Around midnight, Owen finally fell back asleep, his body going limp with exhaustion. Declan stood stiffly, his joints cracking. "Thank you for staying." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, because staying is the hardest thing. Walking away is easy. Staying requires—" He stopped. "It requires something most people don't have. Or maybe it requires being desperate enough that you don't have a choice. Maybe," he moved toward the door, "try to get some sleep. He might wake again before morning." Evelyn went to her room but didn't sleep. She lay in bed listening for any sound from Owen's room, any indication that another storm, meteorological or neurological, was coming. At 5:30 she heard him wake. This time she was in the hallway before his door even opened. "Morning, Owen," she said. "I'm going to make your breakfast. You can come when you're ready." She was at the stove, measuring oatmeal, when Declan appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, his hair uncombed, his clothes the same as last night. "Day 3, he said. "Day 3, she agreed. "Still here." Something changed in his expression, the careful guard he maintained slipping just slightly. "You really might make it." "I told you I would." Owen appeared in the doorway, his small hand finding the frame, his eyes tired but calm. Evelyn set his breakfast on the table, exactly as required, exactly on time. And when Owen climbed into his chair and began eating his counted bites, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, the sense that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Outside, the sun rose on day 3, and Evelyn Pierce was still standing. The following weeks developed their own rhythm, though rhythm implied something musical, something pleasant. What Evelyn learned was closer to survival choreography, movements practiced until they became instinct, patterns memorized because deviation meant crisis. Owen had good days and catastrophic ones, sometimes without warning. A day that started peaceful could end with him hitting himself so hard that Declan had to physically intervene, holding his son's hands while Owen screamed and bucked like a trapped animal. Then the next day would pass without incident, Owen humming contentedly while he built his patterns, ate his measured bites, moved through his routines like water following familiar channels. Evelyn stopped trying to predict which kind of day it would be. She just prepared for both. On a Thursday morning in early November, 3 weeks after she'd arrived, she woke to find Owen standing at the foot of her bed. She'd learned not to startle at his silent appearances. He did this sometimes, sought proximity without interaction, stood near people without acknowledging them. Declan said it meant trust, in Owen's language. Evelyn chose to believe him. "Morning," she said quietly, not sitting up, not making sudden movements. "You hungry?" Owen turned and walked out, his version of yes. By the time she got downstairs, Declan was already measuring oatmeal with the precision of a chemist. He looked less exhausted than he had those first days, his shoulders not quite so weighted. Adequate sleep did that, apparently. He came to your room, Declan said without looking up. How did you know? I heard him pass my door, heard him stop at yours. He poured the exact amount of almond milk. He's never done that with anyone except me. Is that good or bad? It's, Declan paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. It's unprecedented. They didn't discuss it further, but Evelyn caught him watching her throughout breakfast, something calculating in his expression, like he was reassessing data he'd thought he understood. After breakfast, while Owen was in his playroom, Declan's phone rang. His expression changed immediately when he looked at the screen, something tightening, closing off. I need to take this, he said, already walking toward his office. It's important. Evelyn heard his voice through the closed door, cold and sharp in that way that reminded her he wasn't just a tired father. He was also someone people feared, someone who handled problems that couldn't be solved legally. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his face was carefully blank. I have a situation, he said. Business. I need to go into the city. Okay? I'll be back by 3. Owen has therapy at 10. Sarah knows the routine. If there's a problem, I'll call you. We'll be fine. He looked like he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. James will be here. He knows. Declan, go. Handle your situation. Owen and I will survive 4 hours without you. Something flickered in his eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. Thank you. He left in a black car driven by someone who wasn't James, someone whose neck showed tattoos that disappeared under his collar. Evelyn watched from the window, wondering what kind of situation required that kind of driver. Sarah arrived at 10 sharp, cheerful, despite the cold rain that had started falling. Owen tolerated her session better than usual, engaging with the picture cards for almost 15 minutes straight, a minor miracle, according to Sarah's excited notes. He's making progress, Fo, Sarah said afterward, packing up her materials. Real progress. I don't know what you and Declan are doing differently, but whatever it is, keep doing it. We're not doing anything different. You're here. That's different. Sarah paused at the door. Stability matters more than technique for kids like Owen. Consistency matters. Having the same people day after day, never leaving, that matters more than any therapy I can provide. After Sarah left, Evelyn made Owen's lunch and watched him eat his precise portions. She'd started to see patterns within patterns. The way he ate faster on rainy days, slower on sunny ones. The way certain textures pleased him more depending on some variable she hadn't identified yet. He was consistent, yes, but not mechanical. There was preference underneath the routine, personality underneath the precision. At 1 o'clock, the doorbell rang. James was in the laundry room, so Evelyn answered it herself. The man on the doorstep wore an expensive suit and an expression that suggested he wasn't used to waiting. Behind him stood 2 others, equally well-dressed, equally cold-eyed. I'm here to see Declan Harlow, the first man said. His accent was sharp, Eastern European. He's not available. Then I'll wait. He moved to enter. Evelyn didn't step aside. You can wait in your car. The man's eyes went flat. Do you know who I am? No, should I? I'm Conrad Vale, Declan's brother-in-law. And you are? Evelyn felt ice slide down her spine. She knew that name. Declan had mentioned him once, briefly, with the kind of hatred that suggested history she didn't want to know. I'm Evelyn Pierce, Declan's wife. The lie came easily. It was legally true, contract-bound, if not traditionally married, and she had the feeling truth mattered with this man. Conrad's expression shifted. Surprise, then calculation. Wife. The 8th attempt. I'd heard rumors. He smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. How long do you think you'll last? The others averaged 4 days. I've been here 3 weeks. 3 weeks? He said it like an insult. Well, that's longer than expected. May I come in? I'd like to see my nephew. No. I beg your pardon? Declan's not here. Owen is in his routine. You're not part of that routine. The answer is no. Conrad's smile vanished. I'm family. I have rights. You have whatever rights Declan says you have. And since he's not here to say you have any, you're staying on that porch. One of the men behind Conrad moved forward. James appeared in the hallway behind Evelyn, and something in his expression, calm, ready, dangerous, made the man stop. "You should leave," James said quietly, "before Mr. Harlow returns and makes you leave." Conrad straightened his tie, his face settling into something cold and controlled. "Tell Declan I came by. Tell him we need to discuss Owen's living situation. Tell him—" He looked at Evelyn. "Tell him 3 weeks isn't stability. Tell him I'll be in touch with proper authorities about the boy's welfare." He left, his men following. The black car pulled away, disappearing down the drive. "That was Conrad Vale," James said unnecessarily. "I gathered. He's dangerous. Not in the way Mr. Harlow is dangerous. Not physically. Legally. Financially. He's been trying to get custody of Owen since the boy's mother left. Why? He clearly doesn't care about Owen. He cares about the trust fund Owen inherited from his mother's family. Millions. If Conrad gets custody, he controls the money until Owen turns 18. If Owen is deemed incapable of managing his own affairs, which many courts would rule, given his autism, Conrad could control it indefinitely. Evelyn felt sick. Declan knows this? Of course. He's been fighting it for 3 years. The unstable home environment, the revolving door of brides, that's been Conrad's main argument, that Declan can't provide consistent care. James looked at her steadily. "You being here changes that calculus. But only if you stay." "I'm staying." 3 weeks isn't long enough to prove stability in court. You'd need 6 months minimum. A year would be better. "Then I'll give them a year." James studied her for a long moment. "I believe you mean that." "I do." Upstairs, Owen was humming, that sound of contentment, unaware of the threat that had just appeared on his doorstep. Evelyn went to check on him, found him arranging blocks in a new pattern she hadn't seen before. Not the rainbow progression, something else. Random colors, but specific placement. She sat down on the floor, several feet away. "That's different. New pattern?" Owen's hands paused. For a fraction of a second, his eyes flickered toward her face. Not quite eye contact, but close. Closer than ever before. Then he went back to building, and Evelyn sat there watching, thinking about custody battles and trust funds and a man who wanted to take this child away from the only parent who'd ever bothered to learn his language. Declan returned at 2:30, earlier than promised. His jaw was tight, his knuckles raw like he'd hit something. Or someone. "Conrad came here," Evelyn said before he could speak. Declan went very still. "When?" "Around 1. I didn't let him in. He said he wanted to see Owen. Said something about discussing living situations and proper authorities." "What did you tell him?" "That you weren't here, Owen was in his routine, and he could wait in his car or leave." "He left." She paused. "He called me the 8th attempt. Said 3 weeks wasn't stability." Declan's face was stone. "James told you about the custody fight." "He did. I should have told you myself before you agreed to this. It's not just about Owen needing care. It's about Conrad wanting control. If he succeeds, if he gets custody." His voice went rough. "Owen would be institutionalized within a month. Conrad would claim he can't handle him, can't provide adequate care. He'd put my son in a facility and forget he exists except when signing paperwork to access the trust fund. That won't happen. You don't know Conrad. He's patient, methodical. He's been documenting every bride who leaves, every incident, every night Owen screams. He's building a case that I'm unfit, that this environment is unstable, that Owen would be better off." He stopped, jaw working. "Better off anywhere else. Then we make sure there's nothing to document. No more brides leaving, stable home, consistent care." Evelyn moved closer. "He threatened to contact authorities." "What does that mean?" "Child services. Court-appointed evaluators. People who'll come here, watch Owen, interview us, write reports." Declan's hands clenched. "People who'll see a nonverbal autistic child and assume he's suffering, assume I'm failing him, because they don't understand that different isn't damaged. Then we show them. We show them Owen's progress, his therapy reports, his routine. We show them a child who's cared for, understood, safe, with a father who makes his money through illegal channels and a contracted bride who's been here less than a month. You think that plays well to evaluators? I think it plays better than a man who wants to institutionalize his nephew for money. Evelyn's voice was sharp. And I think you're already defeated before the fight's even started. That's not the man who settled a $75,000 debt without blinking. That's not the man this city calls dangerous. But something shifted in Declan's expression. Surprise, then something harder. You're right. I know I am. Conrad's expecting me to fold, expecting you to leave like the others. He's probably already drafting the custody petition, assuming I'll have no defense when the eighth bride runs. Declan's voice went cold, calculating. We don't give him that satisfaction. We present a united front. Stable home, stable marriage, stable environment for Owen. Stable marriage, Evelyn repeated. We're not actually married, not in the traditional sense. The contract is legal, binding. That's all that matters to a court. But if they interview us separately, ask about our relationship, we've barely spent time together beyond coordinating Owen's care. Declan was quiet for a moment. Then that changes, starting now. We need to appear as an actual couple, not just two people managing a child together. How do we do that? Dinners together, time together when Owen's asleep, knowing details about each other that spouses would know, creating a history, even if it's brief. He paused. I'm not asking you to. This stays professional, but externally, to anyone watching, we need to seem legitimate. Okay. Okay. He looked surprised. You're agreeing that easily? I signed a contract for a year. If part of that year involves pretending we're an actual married couple instead of a business arrangement, fine. It doesn't change anything fundamental. It changes quite a bit, actually. Does it? We're already living together, already co-parenting Owen, already sharing a household. Adding some performative intimacy for outsiders doesn't seem that complicated. Declan studied her. You're very pragmatic. I'm very aware of what's at stake. She gestured toward the stairs, toward where Owen was humming in his playroom. He's what's at stake. Everything else is just details. Something softened in Declan's expression, gone before she could examine it. We should discuss specifics. Details that spouses would know, background, history, how we met. How did we meet in this version where we're legitimately married? Through Lydia Carver, actually. That part's true. You were her caregiver. I visited occasionally. Lydia and my mother were friends decades ago. We talked, connected over... He paused, thinking. Over shared understanding of caregiving, of dealing with people the world considers burdens. That's close enough to truth that it'll sound natural. Exactly. The best lies are mostly truth with adjusted context. He moved to the window, looking out at the grounds. Conrad will investigate you. Your background, your brother's debt, how I settled it. We need a version of that story that sounds like romance instead of transaction. So we say you helped Marcus because you cared about me, because we were already involved, already serious. Right. The debt was incidental. I would have helped regardless because I... He stopped, the words clearly uncomfortable. Because I loved you. Love, Evelyn said. Present tense. If we're married, presumably I still love you and you still love me. Yes, present tense. He turned from the window. This is going to require acting. In front of James, in front of therapists, in front of anyone who might report back to Conrad or testify in court. I can act. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it requires, he gestured vaguely, physical proximity, casual affection, the things actual couples do without thinking. Evelyn thought about the hospice patients she'd cared for, the intimate acts she'd performed without hesitation because they needed doing. I've done harder things. That's not the same. No, but the principle is, you need something from me. I'm capable of providing it, therefore I provide it. She shrugged. It's transactional, which is oddly appropriate given our actual arrangement. You really are the most practical person I've ever met. I'm desperate and pragmatic. There's a difference, but the result's the same. She glanced at the clock. Owen has occupational therapy soon. Marcus will be here at 3. Different Marcus. I know, still weird hearing his name. She headed toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I meant what I said to Conrad. I'm staying. Not for 6 months, not for a year. I'm staying until Owen doesn't need me anymore, however long that takes. That could be decades. Then it's decades. Declan looked at her like he was seeing something he hadn't noticed before. Why? The contract's only a year. After that, you're free. You could take the money, leave, start over somewhere else. Because Owen came to my room this morning, because he's starting to trust me, because… She stopped, trying to articulate something she barely understood herself. Because I've spent my whole life being temporary. Temporary caregiver, temporary sister Marcus remembers when he needs something. Temporary presence in dying people's lives. I'm tired of temporary. I want to be permanent for someone. Even if that someone is a 4-year-old who might never speak to you, never hug you, never show affection the way typical children do. Especially then, because everyone else gives up on him when he doesn't perform love the way they expect. I'm not everyone else. Declan crossed the space between them. For a moment she thought he might touch her, reach out, take her hand, something. Instead he just stood close, his gray eyes searching hers. Conrad's going to come at us hard. He has resources, connections, lawyers who specialize in custody cases. He'll twist everything, make our marriage seem fraudulent, make me seem unfit, make you seem like a gold digger, or worse. Let him try. You say that now. Wait until you're being deposed, being asked invasive questions about our relationship, our intimacy, every detail of our private life. Declan, she met his eyes steadily. I grew up poor with an addict mother and a father who left when I was 6. I've had CPS in my home asking invasive questions, judging every aspect of how we lived. I've been deposed before, when my mother died and Marcus's custody was questioned. I know what it's like to have strangers dissect your life looking for failure. This isn't new territory for me. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. I didn't know that. You didn't ask. You knew about Marcus, about the debt. You didn't ask about before. Tell me. So she did, standing there in the hallway, giving him the abbreviated version. Mother who chose drugs over food, over rent, over her children. Father who disappeared and never looked back. Evelyn, 12 years old, raising Marcus, 8. Learning to forge her mother's signature on school forms. Learning to shoplift food without getting caught. Learning that adults didn't help unless you gave them reason to. CPS came 3 times, she said. 3 times they interviewed us, inspected our apartment, made notes on their clipboards. 3 times they decided we were adequately cared for, which was code for not bad enough to justify the paperwork of removal. My mother would clean up for a few weeks after each visit, pretend to be functional, and they'd close the case. Then everything would go back to how it was. How did she die? Overdose. I was 16. Marcus was 12. We had an aunt upstate who took us in, though took us in is generous. She gave us a room and ignored us. I worked, kept Marcus fed, and in school, saved everything I could. Left for nursing school the day I turned 18, took Marcus with me. You've been taking care of him his whole life. Someone had to. Declan was quiet for a long moment. Conrad's going to find all of that. He'll use it. Paint you as someone from a broken home, someone unstable, someone who shouldn't be around Owen. Let him. It'll just make me more sympathetic. Poor girl overcomes adversity, becomes a caregiver, marries a man with a special needs child out of genuine love and understanding. She smiled without humor. The optics are actually pretty good if you spin them right. You've thought about this. I think about everything. It's how I survive. Marcus, the occupational therapist, arrived, and the afternoon followed its usual pattern. Owen engaged well with the activities, his small hands working clay and beads with evident pleasure. When the session ended, Marcus pulled Declan aside. I'm seeing real progress, he said. Fine motor skills are improving. Sensory tolerance is better. Whatever you're doing at home, it's working. It's not me, Declan said, glancing at Evelyn. It's us. That night, they had dinner together for the first time, not grabbing food at separate times, not eating while managing Owen's routine, but an actual meal at the dining room table after Owen was asleep. James had prepared something elaborate that Evelyn couldn't identify, plated like art. Declan poured wine, and they sat across from each other in the formal dining room that felt designed for people who weren't them. This is weird, Evelyn said. Very. Are we supposed to make conversation? Like actual couples do? I assume so. Though most couples probably don't have to actively think about it. He took a drink. Tell me something I don't know about you. Something a husband would know. Evelyn considered. I hate crowds, always have. Too many people, too much noise, too much everything. I used to think it was anxiety, but now I wonder if I'm just wired differently. Like Owen, but functional enough to pass. That's not a small thing to share. You asked for something real. I did. He paused. I can't watch movies, films, television. I can't follow them. My attention fractures, pulls to other things. I used to think I just didn't like entertainment, but Owen's therapist mentioned attention processing differences in autistic individuals, and I recognized myself in the description. You think you're autistic? Undiagnosed, high-functioning, whatever terminology applies, but yes, I think Owen got it from me, just more severely expressed. He set down his glass. That stays between us. Conrad would use it as evidence I'm unfit. Your secret's safe. They ate in silence for a while, the clink of silverware on china oddly loud. My birthday's March 15th, Declan said suddenly. I'm 36. I like order, routine, silence. I hate unexpected changes, loud noises, and people touching me without warning. My favorite color is gray. I read technical manuals for relaxation. I've been told I'm cold, unfeeling, robotic. I've stopped arguing with those assessments. February 8th, 27. I like libraries, rain, and the hours between midnight and dawn when the world is quiet. I hate uncertainty, broken promises, and people who abandon responsibilities. I don't have a favorite color. I've been told I'm too intense, too serious, too difficult to know. I've stopped trying to be easier. Declan smiled slightly. We're quite a pair. Yes, we are. Conrad's going to interview your brother. Use him as a witness to your character, your past, your motivations for being here. Marcus won't talk to him. He will if Conrad pays him, or threatens him. Your brother isn't exactly known for his backbone. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Then I'll talk to Marcus first. Make sure he knows what's at stake. He's still upstate? Last I heard. Call him, tomorrow. Make sure his story aligns with ours. They finished dinner, and James cleared the plates. Declan poured them both more wine, and they moved to the library. Apparently this was what married couples did after dinner, existed in the same space doing separate things. Evelyn found a book on childhood development and autism. Declan sat at the desk with his laptop, typing occasionally, mostly just staring at the screen. What are you working on? She asked. Securing assets, making sure everything's protected if Conrad manages to freeze accounts or tie things up legally. He can't take Owen's trust fund. That's ironclad. But he can make my life difficult in other ways. How did you get into this business? The illegal kind, I mean. Declan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my father built a shipping company, legitimate mostly. When he died, I inherited it. I was 23, too young, too inexperienced. Competitors tried to force me out. I fought back using methods they didn't expect. Made alliances with people my father had avoided. Learned that sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to make others fear what you'll do if they try to take it. And now you're the one people fear. Yes. Though it's ironic, I'm not violent by nature. I'm not cruel. I simply remove obstacles efficiently, and people assume that requires cruelty. Usually, it just requires leverage and patience. The people who drove you here earlier, the ones with tattoos. Security, necessary given the nature of my work. Conrad has his own people. We're not going to come to physical violence. We're both too smart for that. But the threat exists, peripherally. Evelyn thought about the man who'd come to the door, his cold eyes, his casual menace. This life you live, it's dangerous. It can be. Though less now than before Owen was born, I've been more careful, more selective. I can't afford risks that might leave him orphaned. What about his mother? If something happened to you, would she? No. Declan's voice was flat. She signed away all parental rights when she left, took a settlement, agreed never to return, never to claim him. Legally, she doesn't exist, which leaves Owen with me and only me. If I die, if I'm imprisoned, if I'm deemed unfit, custody defaults to next of kin, which is Conrad. That can't happen. No, it can't. He looked at her directly. which is why I need you to understand the full scope of what you're agreeing to. This isn't just helping with a child. This is standing between Owen and someone who wants to use him as an asset. This is potentially testifying in court, being investigated, having your life examined in ways that might be uncomfortable or invasive. If you're going to leave, if you're going to decide this is too much, do it now, before Conrad files paperwork and your departure becomes ammunition. Evelyn closed her book. I'm not leaving. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. She stood. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow I'll call Marcus. Make sure he knows what to say if Conrad contacts him. Then we'll continue doing what we've been doing, taking care of Owen, maintaining routine, being the stable household Conrad claims we're not. She was at the door when Declan spoke again. Thank you for staying, he gestured vaguely, for everything. You don't need to keep thanking me. We're in this together now. Are we? Really? Because 3 weeks ago, we were strangers with a business arrangement. Now, you're talking about decades, about permanence, about facing legal battles that aren't technically your responsibility. They became my responsibility when I signed that contract. When I walked into Owen's room and saw what everyone else ran from. She stopped, unsure how to finish. When you what? When I realized I didn't want to run. That's different from staying out of obligation. I'm staying because I want to be here, because this weird, difficult life makes more sense to me than anything I left behind. She met his eyes. So yes, really, we're in this together. She left him in the library, surrounded by books and silence, and went upstairs to the too large room that was starting to feel less foreign. In the middle of the night, she woke to Owen standing at her door again. Not entering, just standing at the threshold, watching her with those dark, distant eyes. Can't sleep? She asked quietly. No response. But he didn't leave either. Want to sit with me for a while? After a long moment, Owen walked into the room and sat on the floor near the foot of her bed. Not close, but present. His hands began their rhythmic movement, tapping patterns against his legs. Evelyn lay there, watching him stim in the darkness, this small person who'd somehow become the center of her existence in less than a month. You're safe, she said softly. I'm here. Your dad's here. We're not going anywhere. Owen's tapping slowed slightly, not stopping, but gentling. They stayed like that for an hour, boy and woman, silence and rhythm, until Owen eventually stood and walked back to his room without a word. In the morning, Evelyn called Marcus. He answered on the 4th ring, groggy and suspicious. Ev? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need to talk to you about something important. Are you sober? Yes, it's 7 in the morning. Why? There might be a man who contacts you, Conrad Vale. He might ask questions about me, about Declan, about how I ended up here. Okay, what do I tell him? The truth, mostly, but specific truth. You owed money to bad people. You were terrified. I met Declan through a patient I was caring for, Lydia Carver. We connected over shared interests, started seeing each other. When he found out about your debt, he offered to help because he cared about me, not as payment for anything. He settled it because he wanted to, because we were already serious. Then I moved in with him because we were in love. We got married because it felt right. Marcus was quiet. None of that is true. Legally, we're married. The rest is just adjusting context. Can you remember that version? Can you tell it convincingly if Conrad asks? Why would this Conrad guy care? Because he's trying to take Declan's son away, trying to prove our marriage is fake, that I'm here for money, that Declan's unfit. Your testimony matters. Jesus, Ev, what did you get yourself into? Something necessary. Can you do this? Can you stick to that version of events? I guess, yeah. Okay. He paused. Are you safe there? With this guy? Safer than I've been anywhere else. Marcus, I need you to promise me. If Conrad contacts you, if he offers you money, if he threatens you, you stick to the story. You don't give him anything he can use against Declan or me. I promise. I swear. I owe you that much. You owe me more than that, but this is a start. She softened slightly. How are you doing? Really? Better? Aunt Carol's she's fine. I got a job at the hardware store. Nothing special, but it's steady. I haven't gambled in 3 weeks. That's good, Marcus. Keep it that way. They talked for a few more minutes, the conversation awkward in the way it always was between them. Decades of resentment and love tangled too tightly to separate. When she hung up, Declan was standing in her doorway. You heard that, she said. Most of it. Will he hold under pressure? I don't know. He wants to. Whether he's capable is different. If Conrad gets to him first before we can prep him properly, then we deal with it. We've dealt with worse. She stood. Owen's probably awake. I should start breakfast. Evelyn. Declan stopped her with a hand on her arm. Brief contact, then released. You're good at this. Handling complications, staying calm. I'm grateful you're here. Stop thanking me. I'll stop when it stops being true. They went downstairs together, falling into the morning routine that was becoming muscle memory. Owen appeared right on schedule, his presence predictable even when everything else wasn't. And somewhere in the city, Conrad Vale was making plans, pulling strings, building his case against them. But in the kitchen of the Harlow mansion, Evelyn measured oatmeal while Declan counted blueberries, and Owen waited patiently for his breakfast, humming his small sound of contentment. For now, in this moment, they were winning. The notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after Evelyn had first walked through the gates. Official letterhead, legal language, a date circled in red. December 15th, custody evaluation, court appointed, mandatory cooperation required. Declan read it standing in the foyer, his face carved from stone. When he finished, he handed it to Evelyn without a word. She scanned the document. Home visit scheduled. Interviews with both parents, psychological evaluation of the child, assessment of living conditions, stability, parental fitness. The language was clinical, detached, describing Owen like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be understood. 3 weeks, she said. That's not much time. It's exactly enough time for Conrad to have positioned everything in his favor. Declan's voice was flat, controlled. He'll have provided documentation, photos of the other brides leaving, financial records showing my business dealings, character witnesses ready to testify that I'm dangerous, unstable, unfit. Then we provide our own documentation, therapy reports showing Owen's progress, medical records proving he's healthy, well cared for, our own witnesses. Who? James? Who's been my employee for 20 years? The therapists I pay? You who's been here less than 2 months? He turned away, shoulders tight. Conrad's been building this case for 3 years. We have 6 weeks of you not running away. It's not enough. Then we make it enough. Declan laughed, sharp and bitter. How? How do we convince a court-appointed evaluator that our marriage is real when we sleep in separate rooms, barely touch, have no shared history beyond a business arrangement? We change that, starting now. He looked at her. You want to fabricate intimacy for strangers to witness? I want to do whatever's necessary to keep Owen safe. If that means fabricating intimacy, fine. If it means actually developing it, also fine. The end result is the same. We present as a stable, loving couple raising a child together. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's necessary. There's a difference. Evelyn set the notice on the hall table. We have 3 weeks. That's enough time to create the appearance of a real marriage. Enough time to prepare for every question they'll ask. Enough time to make sure our story is airtight. And Owen, how do we prepare him for strangers coming into his home, asking questions, disrupting his routine? Carefully, with visual schedules, with Sarah's help. We start today, building in extra flexibility so he learns to tolerate small disruptions. By the time the evaluator arrives, he'll have practiced enough that it won't destroy him. Declan stared at her. You've thought about this. I think about everything. I told you that. She moved toward the kitchen. Owen needs breakfast. While he eats, we'll start planning. We have work to do. Over the following days, the household shifted in subtle ways. Declan moved his evening work to the library instead of his office, present in shared spaces where Evelyn spent her time. They ate dinner together every night, no longer forcing conversation, but letting it develop naturally. Discussions about Owen's progress, about therapy techniques, about small household details that married couples would know about each other. James watched these changes with something that might have been approval. Sarah noticed during her Wednesday session and pulled Evelyn aside afterward. You and Declan seem more comfortable together, she observed. That's good for Owen. Children sense tension between caregivers, even nonverbal ones. The more united you present, the more secure he feels. We're working on it, Evelyn said, which was true enough. The real shift came on Thursday night, 8 days after the notice arrived. Evelyn woke at 2 a.m. to Owen screaming, not his usual distress, but raw terror, the kind that came from nightmares neurotypical children could articulate, and autistic ones could only express through sound. She reached his room the same moment Declan did, both of them in sleep clothes, both oriented entirely toward the small boy thrashing in his bed. Nightmare, Declan said shortly. He gets them sometimes. Can't tell us what he dreamed, can't be comforted the usual ways. Owen's screaming continued, his hands clutching his weighted blanket, his body rigid with fear. What usually works? Evelyn asked. Time, presence. Sometimes nothing works and we just wait it out. They sat on opposite sides of Owen's bed, not touching him. Touch would make it worse. Just being present, steady, solid. Declan began counting that same low rhythm he'd used during the storm. 1, 2, 3. Evelyn picked up the pattern. 4, 5, 6. They counted together, alternating numbers, creating a rhythm that cut through the screaming. Slowly, incrementally, Owen's cries softened. His body began to relax. His hands loosened their grip. 27, 28, 29. At 40, Owen's breathing evened out. At 50, his eyes closed. At 60, he was asleep again, his small face still wet with tears he couldn't explain. Declan stood slowly, gesturing for Evelyn to follow him out. In the hallway, with Owen's door cracked open behind them, they stood in the dim light looking at each other. Thank you, Declan said quietly, for helping, for knowing to count instead of trying to comfort him. I was following your lead. You were following what worked. That's different. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident. This is what they don't see. The evaluators, Conrad, everyone who thinks Owen would be better off somewhere else. They don't see the 3 a.m. wake-ups the patients required, the learning his language instead of forcing him to learn yours. They just see a nonverbal child and assume suffering. Then we make them see differently. How? Evelyn considered. We document everything. Every therapy session, every meal, every routine. We create a record that proves Owen isn't just surviving here. He's thriving. We show them what Conrad would take him away from. Documentation can be faked. Character can be performed for cameras. True. But Owen's responses can't be faked. His comfort with us, his routines, his progress, that's real. They'll see it if we let them. Declan was quiet for a moment. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. What did you expect? The rumors. The danger. Someone cold, harsh, maybe cruel. She shrugged. Instead, I found a father who counts to 60 at 3 in the morning because numbers calm his son's nightmares. And you expected to marry a criminal and find yourself repulsed. Instead, you're standing in a hallway in your pajamas discussing custody strategy like it's normal. Nothing about this is normal. That's what makes it work. Something passed between them in the darkness, not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two people shaped by circumstance into forms that fit together unexpectedly well. We should sleep, Declan said finally. Tomorrow's Friday. Sarah comes at 10. But neither of them moved immediately. They stood there, aware that something had shifted, unsure what to do with that awareness. Eventually, Evelyn went back to her room, but sleep took longer to find. She lay there thinking about Declan's hands counting numbers, about Owen's trust in their presence, about how 3 months ago she'd been alone in a different life entirely, and now she was part of something she couldn't quite name. The next morning, Sarah arrived with news. I have to submit a report for the custody evaluation, she explained, apologetic. The court requested documentation from all of Owen's care providers. I wanted you to know before I send it. What will it say? Declan asked, tension evident in his shoulders. The truth. That Owen has made significant progress under your care. That his home environment is structured, supportive, and tailored to his needs. That removing him from this household would be devastating to his development. Sarah paused. I'll also note the improvement since Evelyn arrived. The additional stability, the consistency. It's measurable in Owen's engagement levels. After Sarah left, Declan disappeared into his office. Evelyn found him an hour later, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. "What are you thinking?" she asked from the doorway. "That Sarah's report will help, but it won't be enough. Conrad will have his own experts, professionals who'll argue that Owen needs intensive institutional care, that home-based therapy is insufficient." His jaw tightened. "He'll make it sound like I'm neglecting Owen by not institutionalizing him, like keeping him here is selfish. It's the opposite of selfish. I know that, you know that, but courts don't always see it that way. They see a nonverbal autistic child and assume he needs more than a parent can provide." Evelyn moved into the office, closing the door behind her. "Then we show them what you provide. Not just therapy and routine, but love, understanding, acceptance of who Owen is, not trying to force him into who they think he should be. Love isn't measurable on evaluation forms. No, but its presence is observable. The way Owen comes to you when he's overwhelmed. The way he tolerates your touch when he won't tolerate anyone else's. The way he—" She stopped, remembering. "He came to my room that first time. To yours, he's been going his whole life. To mine, 3 weeks in. That's trust. That's evidence of a healthy attachment, a child who feels secure enough to seek proximity on his own terms." "You're right." Declan's voice was quiet. I'm afraid. Not of losing the custody fight, though that terrifies me. I'm afraid of what it will do to Owen if he's taken. If he's put in a facility with strangers who don't know him, don't understand him, don't care enough to learn his language. He'll think we abandoned him. He'll think—" His voice broke. Evelyn had never seen him this close to falling apart. She crossed to where he sat, did something she'd never done before, reached out and touched his shoulder. Firm pressure, the kind Owen liked, the kind that grounded instead of startled. Declan went still under her hand. "We're not going to lose," she said. "Conrad thinks he's already won because 7 other women ran. But I'm not them, and you're not the same man who let them run. We're different now, stronger, united. And Owen is thriving because of it. The evaluator will see that. The court will see that. We just have to hold steady." Declan's hand came up, covering hers on his shoulder. "Thank you. For staying, for—" He stopped. "For being exactly who Owen needed. Who I needed, though I didn't know it." The moment stretched, intimate in ways their arrangement hadn't prepared them for. Then Evelyn squeezed his shoulder once and stepped back, and they both pretended the moment hadn't happened. The days leading up to the evaluation were careful choreography. They practiced their story until it sounded natural, how they met through Lydia, how attraction had developed, how Declan's help with Marcus's debt had been generosity born from love, not transaction. They memorized details about each other. Declan's birthday, his favorite foods, his routines, Evelyn's past, her preferences, her reasons for leaving hospice work. They started sleeping in the same room. Not the same bed. That would have been too much, too fast, too false. But Declan moved a second bed into Evelyn's room, positioned against the opposite wall. Separate but shared space, what married couples might do when one partner had insomnia or different sleep needs. "If they ask, we say you snore," Evelyn suggested. "I don't snore." "They don't know that. We say you snore. I'm a light sleeper. Separate beds preserve our sanity and our marriage." It's reasonable, mundane, the kind of detail that sounds true because it's so unglamorous. The first night sharing a room was awkward. They moved around each other carefully, aware of proximity, of the performance that had become their lives. But by the third night, it felt almost natural. They'd talk quietly before sleeping, discussing Owen's day, the evaluation strategy, whatever thoughts neither wanted to carry alone. One night, Declan asked, "Do you regret this? Agreeing to my arrangement?" Evelyn was quiet, thinking. "No." "Do you regret asking me?" "No, though I regret not being honest about what it would actually entail. The custody fight, Conrad, the scrutiny. You signed up to help with Owen, not to defend your character to strangers. I signed up for whatever came with Owen. This came with Owen. Therefore, I signed up for it. Your logic is very direct. It's the only kind I know." On December 14th, the day before the evaluation, they received another document. Conrad's custody petition, formal and filed, requesting full guardianship and institutional placement for Owen. The language was clinical, damning. It painted Declan as unstable, dangerous, incapable of providing adequate care. It described Owen as severely disabled, suffering under inadequate supervision, at risk in his current environment. It described Evelyn as a gold digger, a woman with a troubled past who'd entered a contract marriage for financial gain with no genuine attachment to the child. "He has investigators," Declan said, reading the document. "He knows about your mother, your childhood, the CPS visits. He's going to use all of it. Let him. None of it is shameful. Surviving a difficult childhood doesn't make me unfit. It makes me resilient." Evelyn took the petition from him. "What's shameful is a man who wants to institutionalize his nephew for money. We make sure the evaluator understands that." That night, neither of them slept well. They lay in their separate beds in the shared room, both staring at ceilings, both thinking about what tomorrow would bring. Around midnight, Declan spoke into the darkness. "If we lose, if Conrad gets custody, I want you to know you did everything you could, more than anyone else would have. Owen knows that in his way. I know it. We're not going to lose. But if we do, we won't. Stop catastrophizing and get some sleep. Tomorrow we show them exactly who we are, and we make them see that who we are is exactly what Owen needs." The evaluator arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. Dr. Patricia Morrison, mid-50s, efficient, with eyes that missed nothing. She carried a tablet and a folder thick with documentation, Conrad's evidence probably, already shaping her expectations. Declan answered the door with Evelyn beside him, her hand in his. They'd practiced this, the casual intimacy of long-married couples. His hand was warm, steady, and she could feel his pulse elevated despite his calm expression. "Mr. Harlow, Mrs. Harlow, I'm Dr. Morrison. Thank you for welcoming me into your home." "Of course," Declan said. "Please, come in." They gave her a tour first. The house, the grounds, Owen's specially designed playroom, the sensory-friendly spaces they'd created. Doctor. Morrison took notes, her expression neutral, impossible to read. Owen was with James in the kitchen, eating his mid-morning snack. When they entered, he didn't look up, focused entirely on his measured bites. Dr. Morrison observed from the doorway. "That's Owen," Evelyn said quietly. "He's in his routine right now. It's best not to interrupt." "Does he interact with you at all?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Make eye contact? Respond to his name?" "On his terms, yes. Owen's communication is different, but it's there if you know how to look for it." As if responding to her voice, Owen's hand paused. He set down his spoon with deliberate care, climbed off his chair, and walked directly to Evelyn. He stood close, not touching, but within her space, and looked at the floor near her feet. Proximity. Trust. His version of greeting. "Hello, Owen," Evelyn said softly. "This is Dr. Morrison. She's visiting today. Everything's okay." Owen stood there for another moment, then walked back to his chair and resumed eating. Dr. Morrison was watching Evelyn. "He came to you specifically. He does that sometimes, when he wants reassurance that his environment is still safe, still predictable. And he finds that reassurance in your presence." "In both of ours," Declan added. "Evelyn and I function as a unit for Owen, consistent, stable, always present." The formal interview happened in the library, Doctor. Morrison sat across from them, tablet open, questions prepared. "How did you two meet?" They told the practice story. Lydia Carver, shared conversations, connection over caregiving. It sounded natural because most of it was true, just recontextualized. "And when did the relationship become romantic?" "Gradually," Evelyn said. "We'd talked during my visits to Lydia. Found we had a lot in common. Both of us dealing with people who needed specialized care, both of us understanding what it meant to be patient when the world demands speed. Eventually, Declan asked if I'd like to have coffee somewhere other than Lydia's living room. It developed from there. Mr. Harlow, you settled a significant debt for Mrs. Harlow's brother. Some might see that as purchasing a relationship rather than building one naturally." Declan's face remained calm. "I helped Marcus because Evelyn was terrified for him. Because the woman I loved was being destroyed watching her brother spiral, and I had the means to help. I would have done it regardless of whether Evelyn stayed with me. The debt and our relationship were separate matters. Yet she moved in shortly after. I moved in because we were already serious. Evelyn said. Because I'd met Owen, understood what Declan's life entailed, and wanted to be part of it. The debt being settled removed an obstacle, but it didn't create the relationship. Dr. Morrison made notes. Mrs. Harlow, you're aware that 7 women previously lived in this household in a similar capacity. I'm aware 7 women left. I don't know that their capacity was similar to mine. How is yours different? They were trying to fit into a life they didn't understand. I understood from the beginning what Owen needed, what this household required. I wasn't trying to change anything or anyone. I was trying to fit into what already existed and help make it work better. You have a difficult childhood, according to records. Mother with substance abuse issues, father who abandoned the family, multiple CPS interventions. Some might argue that background makes you unstable. Some might argue it makes me resilient. I survived circumstances that would have broken many people. I learned to be adaptable, resourceful, and patient. Those skills serve Owen well. Mr. Harlow, your business dealings are, to put it mildly, legally ambiguous. Are you concerned about exposing your son to that world? My business keeps us housed, fed, and able to afford the specialized care Owen needs. It's compartmentalized from my personal life. Owen has never been exposed to anything illegal, dangerous, or inappropriate. My professional reputation and my capabilities as a father are separate matters. The questions continued for 2 hours. They asked about finances, about daily routines, about how they handled Owen's meltdowns, about their marriage, their sleeping arrangements, their plans for the future. Evelyn answered honestly where she could, carefully where she had to. Beside her, Declan did the same, their stories aligning seamlessly because they'd practiced until the truth and the performance were indistinguishable. Finally, Dr. Morrison closed her tablet. I'd like to observe Owen for a while. His routines, his interactions with both of you. Would that be acceptable? Of course, Declan said. They spent the afternoon in Owen's playroom. Dr. Morrison sat in the corner, observing while Declan and Evelyn engaged in their usual routine with Owen. They didn't perform, didn't exaggerate. They just existed as they had for the past 6 weeks, patient, present, fluent in the language of a child who communicated without words. Owen built his patterns. He hummed. At one point, when Declan's phone buzzed with a call he couldn't ignore, Owen looked briefly distressed. Evelyn moved closer, not touching, just closer, and began counting quietly. Owen's distress faded. He returned to his blocks. When Declan came back 10 minutes later, Owen looked up briefly, acknowledgement, then returned to his pattern. He noticed you were gone, Dr. Morrison observed. He was relieved when you returned. He likes consistency, known people, familiar routines. Declan sat down at his usual distance from Owen. Change is difficult for him, but he's learning to tolerate it when the foundation is stable. And Mrs. Harlow is part of that foundation now. She is. Owen trusts her. That's significant. Trust doesn't come easily for him. At 3 o'clock, Marcus arrived for occupational therapy. Dr. Morrison observed that session too, watching Owen engage with the activities, noting his focus, his evident pleasure in the tactile work. Afterward, she interviewed Marcus briefly. You've been working with Owen for how long? 8 months? I've seen real progress, especially recently. His fine motor skills have improved significantly. His sensory tolerance is better. Whatever's happening at home, it's working. At 5 p.m., Dr. Morrison prepared to leave. I have everything I need for now. I'll be submitting my report to the court within 2 weeks. You'll receive a copy as well. And your initial impression? Declan asked, unable to help himself. Dr. Morrison's expression was unreadable. I'll reserve judgment until I've completed my full analysis. Thank you for your cooperation. They watched her drive away, then stood in the foyer in silence. Well? Evelyn asked finally. I don't know. She's professional, good at hiding her opinions. Declan's hand found hers, squeezing briefly. We did everything we could. We did everything right. That doesn't always matter in family court. That night, exhausted, they lay in their separate beds in their shared room. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Evelyn's voice cut through the darkness. Do you believe in anything? Any higher power? Any force that determines how things turn out? No, I believe in preparation, leverage, and controlling what you can control. Why? Because right now our fate is in someone else's hands, and I hate that. I want to do something, fix something, ensure the outcome. But there's nothing to do except wait. So we wait. And we keep doing what we've been doing, taking care of Owen, maintaining stability, being exactly who we've been. The evaluation is over. Now we trust that what they saw was enough. What if it wasn't? Declan was quiet for a long moment. Then we fight, appeal, file countermotions. Make Conrad's life as difficult as he's tried to make ours. We don't give up. We don't let him win. He threatened to institutionalize Owen. I know. Over my dead body. Mine too. They lay in the darkness, united in determination if nothing else, and eventually exhaustion pulled them both under. The next morning, everything felt different. The evaluation was done, the waiting had begun, and the careful performance they'd maintained could finally ease slightly. Except it didn't ease. They'd been performing so long that it had become real somewhere along the way. Declan still found Evelyn's hand without thinking. She still leaned slightly into his presence when they stood together. The touches that had been deliberate had become instinctive. One morning, a week after the evaluation, Evelyn woke to find Declan sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. "Can't sleep?" she asked quietly. "Haven't slept. Thinking about all the ways this could go wrong." She got up, crossed to his bed, sat beside him, close but not touching. "Tell me." "Conrad has resources I don't. Legal connections, judges who owe him favors, character witnesses who will say whatever he pays them to say. Even with Dr. Morrison's report, even if it's favorable, he can appeal, drag this out for years. And every day it continues is another day Owen lives under the threat of being taken away. So what do we do? I don't know. That's the problem. For the first time in my adult life, I don't know how to fix something." Evelyn thought for a moment. "What does Conrad want?" "Owen's trust fund. Control. Power." "No. What does he actually want underneath all of that? What's his real motivation?" Declan looked at her. "Money. It's always money with him. He's leveraged himself into debt, made bad investments. Owen's trust fund would solve his financial problems. Then we solve them differently. We give him what he wants without giving him Owen. You want me to pay him off? I want you to make him an offer he'd be stupid to refuse. Access to capital, investment opportunities, whatever would stabilize his finances and make fighting for custody more trouble than it's worth. That's..." Declan stopped. "That might actually work. If I offer partnership in legitimate ventures, access to my networks, resources that solve his immediate problems, he might take it. Especially if the alternative is a lengthy custody battle he might lose." "Exactly. You're good at leverage. So, leverage." Declan looked at her like he was seeing something new. "You're brilliant. I'm practical. There's a difference." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, casual intimacy that startled them both. His hand lingered near her face for a moment, then dropped. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For thinking strategically when I'm thinking emotionally. For being..." "Your partner?" "Yes, my partner." The word hung between them, loaded with meanings neither wanted to examine too closely. Later that day, Declan made calls. Negotiations happened behind closed doors in languages Evelyn didn't speak, with people she'd never meet. She didn't ask for details. She just kept Owen's routine stable, kept the household functioning, kept being the foundation that allowed Declan to handle everything else. 3 days later, Conrad arrived at the house. Declan met him in the study, the door closed. Evelyn stayed in the library with Owen, listening to the rise and fall of voices through the walls. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When Conrad left, his expression was thoughtful rather than hostile. Declan emerged looking exhausted but grimly satisfied. He's considering the offer. Partnership in 3 ventures, guaranteed returns, resources to stabilize his finances. In exchange, he withdraws the custody petition and agrees not to pursue it again. Will he take it? Probably. It solves his problems without the uncertainty of court, and I made it clear that if he doesn't take it, I'll bury him. Financially, legally, every way that matters. He believes me because he should. I'm fully capable of it. So we wait again. We wait. But this waiting felt different, less helpless, more like strategic patience. The answer came 4 days later. Conrad agreed to the terms. The custody petition was withdrawn. Owen would stay with Declan. The threat that had hung over them for months, years for Declan, was finally, definitively gone. When Declan told her, Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was there. It's over? It's over. Owen is safe. Conrad is handled. We won. We won, she repeated, and the pronoun felt significant. Not you, not I, but we. That night they celebrated quietly. James prepared Owen's favorite meal, and after the boy was asleep, Declan opened an expensive bottle of something that probably cost more than Evelyn had made in a year at the hospice. They sat in the library, the fire burning, the relief palpable. What happens now? Evelyn asked. The contract was for a year. We're not even halfway through. But the custody fight is over. You don't need me to stay for that anymore. Declan was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to leave? I asked you first. I don't want you to leave. Owen needs you. He stopped. I need you. Not for the custody fight. Not for appearances. Just because you're part of this now. Part of us. I don't want to leave either. This weird, complicated life. It makes more sense than anything I left behind. She looked at him directly. So I guess we keep going. Keep being whatever this is. A family, Declan said quietly. I think this is a family. Evelyn tested the word silently. Family. She'd never really had one, not one that functioned, not one that stayed. Okay, we're a family. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the house settling around them. Somewhere upstairs, Owen slept safely in his room, dreaming whatever dreams he couldn't articulate. And for the first time and longer than either of them could remember, the future felt less like a threat and more like a possibility. Winter deepened into January, and the house settled into rhythms that no longer felt temporary. The custody fight was over, the threat neutralized, but Evelyn didn't pack her bags. The contract still had 6 months remaining, but neither of them mentioned it anymore. The expiration date had stopped mattering somewhere along the way. Owen turned 5 in late January. They didn't have a party. Crowds and noise would have destroyed him, but they celebrated in their own way. His favorite meal? Prepared exactly as he liked it. A new set of textured blocks that Sarah had recommended. Declan and Evelyn singing a quiet, off-key version of Happy Birthday, while Owen hummed along, his own contribution to the moment. He didn't blow out candles. Open flame disturbed him. He didn't open wrapped presents. The sound of tearing paper was intolerable. But he touched the new blocks with evident pleasure, arranging them immediately into patterns, and that was enough. 5 years old, Declan said that night, after Owen was asleep. They were in the library again, their default gathering place. 5 years of this. Sometimes I can't believe we've made it this far. You've made it this far, Evelyn corrected. I've only been here 4 months. 4 months that changed everything. He looked at her over his glass. You know that, right? Before you came, I was barely surviving. Now I'm living? Yes, living. Not just managing crisis after crisis, but actually building something sustainable, something that feels like a real life. Evelyn was quiet, unsure how to respond to that level of honesty. They'd grown comfortable with each other, but this felt different, more vulnerable, more true. I'm not going anywhere, she said finally, when the contract expires. I know we haven't discussed it explicitly, but I'm not leaving. You don't have to stay out of obligation. I'm not. I'm staying because this is where I want to be, because Owen trusts me, because you... She stopped, not quite ready to finish that thought. Because I what? Because you've become someone I don't want to leave. You and Owen both. This household, this weird little family we've built, it's mine now. I'm not giving it up. Declan set down his glass and crossed to where she sat. He knelt in front of her chair, his gray eyes level with hers, his expression serious. Then stay. Not because of a contract, not because of obligation or duty or whatever legal language we signed. Stay because you want to. Stay because this is real now. It is real. Then we should make it official. Actually official, not just legally binding paperwork. A real marriage, if you want that. If you want... He stumbled over the words. If you want me. Evelyn's breath caught. You're asking me to marry you? We're already married. We're contractually bound. That's different from choosing each other. I'm asking if you want to choose this. Choose us. She looked at him. This man who'd been a stranger 4 months ago, who'd become her partner, her co-parent, her friend. This man who counted to 60 at 3 a.m. and built his entire life around a child the world called broken. This man who'd given her purpose when she'd been drowning in her brother's mistakes and her own invisibility. Yes, she said simply. I choose this. I choose us. Declan's hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. I don't know how to do this. Relationships, romance, normal courtship. I've never been good at any of it. I don't need normal, I just need honest. Then honestly, I think I've been falling in love with you since you sat on Owen's floor that first night and didn't try to force him to acknowledge you. Since you stayed through the storm and didn't run when he screamed. Since you stood up to Conrad and told him he couldn't see Owen because you understood, instinctively, that protecting Owen's routine mattered more than social niceties. That's a very specific list. I'm a specific person. You know that about me. I do. She leaned forward, her forehead touching his. Honestly, I don't know when it happened for me. It was gradual. One morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't counting days until the contract expired. I was hoping it would never expire, that this you, Owen, this life, would just continue indefinitely. It can. It will, if you want it. I want it. He kissed her then, carefully, like she might break or flee. She kissed him back with more certainty, her hands finding his shoulders, grounding them both. When they broke apart, Declan was smiling, genuinely smiling, not the careful expression he showed the world, but something real and unguarded. We should do this properly, he said. Not the legal arrangement we already have, an actual wedding, something small, just us and Owen, and maybe James and the therapists, something that marks this as real. Owen won't tolerate a traditional ceremony. Then we do it here, in the garden. Quiet, brief, structured so he can participate in whatever way feels right to him. Make it about the three of us becoming official, becoming permanent. You've thought about this. I've thought about everything. You know that about me too. They planned it for early March, when the garden would be starting to wake from winter, but before the weather turned unpredictable. Simple ceremony, minimal guests, everything designed around Owen's needs and tolerances. Sarah helped them prepare Owen using visual schedules and social stories. Mama and Dada are having a special day, she explained, using the picture cards Owen understood. Everyone will wear nice clothes. We'll stand in the garden. It will be short and quiet. Then we'll have Owen's favorite lunch. Owen didn't respond verbally. He never did, but he looked at the pictures, touched them in sequence, his version of processing new information. The morning of the ceremony, March 15th, Declan's birthday, deliberately chosen, dawned clear and cold. Evelyn woke in the bed that had become hers in the room they now genuinely shared, Declan already awake in his own bed across the space. Nervous? He asked. Surprisingly, no. You? Terrified. But not about marrying you, about whether Owen can handle today without melting down. He'll handle it, and if he doesn't, we'll adapt. That's what we do. They dressed carefully. Evelyn in a simple dress that wouldn't overwhelm Owen with patterns or textures. Declan in dark slacks and a shirt without a tie. Formal, but not stiff. Owen in his favorite soft pants and a shirt they'd let him choose, tags already removed, seams positioned where they wouldn't bother him. The ceremony was at noon, in the garden where Owen sometimes did his outdoor routine. A small space cleared, chairs for the few guests, James, Sarah, Marcus the occupational therapist, and surprisingly Lydia Carver, wheeled out by a nurse, determined to witness what she'd inadvertently set in motion. The officiant was a woman Declan knew from his business dealings, someone discreet who asked no questions and kept no records beyond what was legally required. She kept it brief, her words simple and direct. Owen stood between them, his small hand in Evelyn's, not holding, but touching. Contact he'd initiated, connection on his terms. When the officiant asked if they took each other, Declan's voice was steady. I do, completely. Evelyn's was just as sure. I do. Always. They exchanged rings, simple bands, nothing flashy, nothing that drew unnecessary attention, symbols of what they'd already become to each other. You may kiss, the officiant said. Declan leaned in, kissed Evelyn softly, aware of Owen between them, aware that this moment was as much about the three of them as about the two of them. When he pulled back, Owen was looking up, not at them directly, but at the sky above them, at something that caught his attention. Birds, maybe, or clouds, or light patterns only he could perceive. "We're married," Evelyn said, testing the words. "We were always married. Now it's just true in every sense." Declan's hand found hers over Owen's head, their small family unit complete and official. The celebration afterward was exactly what Owen needed. His routine maintained, his favorite food served, no loud music or overwhelming crowds. Just the people who mattered, existing quietly together in the house that had become home. Lydia pulled Evelyn aside at one point, her old hands surprisingly strong. "You did it. You stayed." "I did." Declan's different now, lighter. Owen's different too, more engaged, more present. "You did that. We did that, all of us together." "Maybe, but you were the catalyst, the one who didn't run when it got hard." Lydia smiled. "I knew you would be. That's why I told you about him." "You match made us?" "I saw two people who needed each other and gave them a reason to meet. What happened after was up to you." She patted Evelyn's hand. "I'm glad you made it real. Glad you chose each other." "So am I." The winter months gave way to spring, and with the changing season came other changes. Declan began restructuring his business, shifting from the gray areas that had defined his reputation toward more legitimate ventures. Not completely legal, he still had connections, still handled problems in unconventional ways, but safer, more sustainable for a man with a family to protect. "Conrad's partnership is actually working," he told Evelyn one evening. "He's making money, staying out of trouble, leaving us alone. Turns out giving him what he needed was more effective than fighting him. Sometimes the best victory is the one where nobody loses." Spoken like someone who's never enjoyed winning. "I've never had much to win. This, you, Owen, this life. This is my first real victory. I'm not interested in rubbing anyone's face in it. I just want to keep it." Owen continued making progress. Small gains that would seem insignificant to outsiders, but were monumental to those who understood his language. He started using more picture cards to communicate wants and needs. He tolerated unexpected sounds better, recovering faster from sensory overload. He sought proximity more often, standing near Evelyn or Declan when the world felt too large. One morning in April, Evelyn woke to find Owen sitting on the floor beside her bed, not at the foot, but right beside it, his small hand resting on the mattress near her arm. Not touching her, but close, closer than he'd ever been voluntarily. "Morning, Owen," she said softly, not moving, not disturbing whatever had brought him here. He hummed, that sound of contentment, and stayed there while she woke slowly, while Declan stirred in his own bed and registered the scene with quiet wonder. "He's never done that," Declan whispered. "Been that close by choice. He's doing it now." They stayed frozen, not wanting to break the moment, until Owen eventually stood and walked out, his routine calling him toward breakfast. "Progress," Declan said. "Yes, progress." In May, Marcus called. Not the occupational therapist, Evelyn's brother, calling for the first time in months. "I wanted to tell you myself," he said, his voice different, steadier. "I've been sober 4 months, really sober, not just not gambling sober. I got a sponsor, started attending meetings. I'm trying to be better." "That's good, Marcus, really good. I know I can never repay you for what you did, for what you sacrificed to save me, but I want you to know I'm not wasting it. I'm making it count. You don't owe me repayment. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep being better." "I will." "And Ev, I'm happy you stayed there. With Declan and Owen, you sound different, lighter, like you finally found where you belong." "I did. I really did." When she hung up, Declan was watching from the doorway. "Your brother?" "He's doing well. Actually well, not just saying it. Good. You deserve that peace, knowing he's okay. We both deserve peace. We've earned it." He crossed to where she stood, pulled her into his arms, casual affection that had become natural over the past months. She leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," he said. Simple statement, no fanfare. I love you too. You and Owen both. He loves you in his way. You know that, right? The proximity he seeks, the trust he shows, the way he calms when you're near, that's love. His version of it. I know, it's enough. It's more than enough. Summer arrived, and with it came new routines. Owen tolerated the pool now, the sensory input of water soothing rather than overwhelming when approached on his terms. They'd spend afternoons there, Owen floating with his weighted vest, Evelyn and Declan nearby, but not hovering, letting him explore this new experience at his own pace. James retired in July, his age finally catching up with his willingness to work. They threw him a quiet party. Nothing overwhelming, just acknowledgement of decades of service, and he pulled Evelyn aside before he left. You proved me wrong, he said. I thought you'd run like the others. Thought 3 weeks was luck, not staying power. I'm glad I was wrong. So am I. Take care of them. Owen and Mr. Harlow both. They need you more than they'll probably ever say. I know, and they're taking care of me too. It goes both ways. His replacement was younger, quieter, a woman named Margaret, who understood Owen's needs instinctively and asked few questions about the household's unconventional structure. She fit in seamlessly, another piece of the stable foundation they'd built. In August, Sarah brought news. I'm moving, taking a position at a research hospital in Boston. I'm so sorry. I know consistency matters for Owen, and leaving disrupts that. When? Evelyn asked, already thinking through how to transition Owen to a new therapist. End of September. I'll help find a replacement, someone who understands Owen's specific needs. I'll make the transition as smooth as possible. They spent the next month preparing Owen for the change, using visual schedules and careful repetition. Sarah introduced her replacement gradually, Dr. Michael Torres, younger but experienced, with a gentle manner that Owen seemed to tolerate. The final session with Sarah was in late September, 5 years almost to the day since Evelyn had first walked through the Harlow gates. Sarah hugged them both, Evelyn and Declan, and knelt at Owen's level without expecting eye contact. You're a remarkable kid, Owen. Keep growing, keep learning, keep being exactly who you are. Dr. Torres will take good care of you. Owen didn't respond, but his hand reached out briefly, touching Sarah's arm, contact he'd initiated, goodbye in his language. Then he walked away, returning to his blocks, processing the change in the only way he knew how. That was huge, Sarah said, wiping her eyes. Him touching me goodbye, he's come so far. You helped him get there, Declan said. We're grateful. No, you did this, you too, building a home where he feels safe enough to grow. I just provided tools. You provided everything else. Autumn came, painting the grounds in colors Owen found fascinating. He'd stand at the windows, watching leaves fall, tracking their descent with unusual focus. Declan and Evelyn would stand with him sometimes, sharing his observation, seeing the world through eyes that noticed patterns they'd miss. One October evening, after Owen was asleep, they sat in the library, their space, their ritual, their time together. The contract expired last month, Declan said suddenly. I almost didn't notice. It stopped mattering so long ago. It did. We stopped being a contract and became something real. More than real, essential. He turned to face her fully. I can't imagine this life without you anymore. Can't imagine raising Owen alone. Can't imagine my days without you in them. You've become everything? Yes, everything. She moved from her chair to his, settling into his lap, her head on his shoulder. You're everything to me too. You and Owen both. This strange, beautiful life we've built. It is beautiful, isn't it? Despite the hard parts, despite the meltdowns and the sleepless nights and the constant vigilance, it's beautiful because it's ours. Because it's ours, she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the house settling around them. Upstairs, Owen slept in his carefully structured room, safe and loved and understood. The threat of Conrad was long past. The custody fight was won. The performance they'd maintained had transformed into genuine partnership, genuine love, genuine family. Winter returned, completing the cycle. 1 year since the custody evaluation, since the threat had loomed largest, since they'd fought to keep Owen safe. On December 15th, the anniversary of that evaluation, they didn't mark it with ceremony. Instead, they did what they did every day. Maintained Owen's routines, managed his needs, existed as the stable foundation that allowed him to thrive. But that night, after Owen was asleep, Declan produced a folder. I had papers drawn up, official adoption papers. I want to adopt you as Owen's legal mother, not just my wife, but his parent, equally responsible, equally empowered. If something happens to me, you'll have full custody. No questions, no fights, no Conrad trying to intervene. Evelyn took the papers, reading through the legal language that would make official what had been true for months. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. You're his mother in every way that matters. This just makes it legal. Then yes, absolutely yes. They signed the papers that night, witnessed by Margaret, made official in the eyes of the law what had been true in their hearts for longer than either could pinpoint. Christmas came, and they celebrated Owen's way. No overwhelming decorations, no loud music, just small acknowledgments of the season. A tree with lights Owen found soothing rather than disturbing. Presents opened without wrapping paper, given days before the actual holiday, so the day itself could be routine and peaceful. Owen received new sensory toys, new blocks, new tools for exploring his world. Evelyn gave Declan a book on autism and neurodiversity written by autistic adults, perspectives on the condition from inside rather than outside. Declan gave Evelyn a necklace with 3 stones, one for each of them, he explained, their small family represented in silver and gems. On Christmas morning, while Owen played with his new blocks, building patterns of increasing complexity, Evelyn and Declan sat together watching him. He's happy, Declan observed. Really happy. You can see it in how he moves, how he hums, how he engages with his world. We're all happy. That's what we built here. Not perfection, not some fairy tale version of family, just real happiness, earned through patience and understanding and choosing each other every day. Do you ever regret it? Saying yes to my arrangement? Walking into this life? Evelyn thought about who she'd been a year and a half ago. Invisible, exhausted, drowning in her brother's mistakes, caring for dying strangers who never remembered her name. She thought about the woman who'd stood outside these gates in the rain, desperate and scared and willing to do anything to save Marcus. No, not once, not ever. This life, this family, it's everything I didn't know I needed, everything I didn't think existed. You saved us. You know that, right? Owen and me both. We were surviving before you came. Now, we're thriving. We saved each other. That's what family does. The new year arrived quietly. They didn't do parties or celebrations, too overwhelming for Owen, too unnecessary for Evelyn and Declan. They just continued existing together, building routines that felt less like structure and more like home. In February, on Evelyn's birthday, Declan surprised her with something unexpected. I started a foundation for families with autistic children to provide resources, therapy funding, respite care, things we've been lucky enough to afford, but most families can't. I named it the Evelyn Pierce Foundation. She stared at him. You named it after me? After us. After what we learned building this household. That autistic children don't need fixing. They need understanding. They need patience. They need people willing to learn their language instead of forcing them to learn ours. The foundation will help families do that. That's... She couldn't finish, tears threatening. That's everything. You taught me that Owen's differences aren't deficits. That his way of being in the world is valid and valuable. That forcing him to mask or pretend or perform neurotypicality is cruelty, not help. I want other families to learn that too. The foundation launched in March, funded by Declan's legitimate business ventures and managed by professionals who understood neurodiversity not as pathology, but as difference. Within months, they were helping dozens of families. Within a year, hundreds. Owen turned 6 in January of the following year, 2 full years after Evelyn had first arrived. The changes were measurable now, documented in therapy reports and progress notes. His communication had expanded through picture cards and some basic sign language. His sensory tolerance had improved. His meltdowns were less frequent, less severe, more manageable when they occurred. But more than the measurable changes, there was something else. A security that showed in how he moved through his world. A trust that showed in how he sought proximity to Evelyn and Declan. A peace that came from knowing his environment was stable, His caregivers were constant, his needs were understood and accommodated rather than punished or pathologized. One March morning, 3 years after that first night, when Evelyn had stood in Owen's doorway watching him rock and hit the wall, she woke to find him standing beside her bed again. But this time, he didn't just stand there. His small hand reached out, touched her arm. Deliberate contact, gentle pressure, connection on his terms. "Hi, Owen," she whispered, not moving, not disturbing the moment. He kept his hand there for several seconds. Then he leaned forward slightly, his forehead touching her shoulder, the closest thing to a hug he'd ever initiated. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Across the room, Declan was awake, witnessing this, understanding the significance. Owen straightened, his hand leaving her arm, and walked out, breakfast routine calling him. But the moment remained, suspended in memory, proof of trust so deep it manifested physically. 3 years, Declan said softly. 3 years of you being here, being constant, being safe. That's what that was. Him saying thank you in the only way he can. I know. I know exactly what it was. They lay there for a moment longer, grateful for this small miracle, this proof that patience and understanding and love, even love expressed in unconventional ways, could transform everything. Later that spring, on a warm afternoon when the garden was blooming and the world felt gentler than usual, they held a small ceremony. Not a wedding, they'd already done that. This was something different, an adoption finalization party, marking the day the papers officially declared Evelyn as Owen's legal mother. The same small group attended: Margaret, Dr. Torres, a few other therapists and teachers who'd become part of Owen's world. Lydia Carver had passed away over the winter, peacefully in her sleep, but Evelyn felt her presence anyway, grateful for the old woman who'd seen potential where others saw only transaction. Owen sat in the garden with his blocks, building patterns while adults celebrated around him. He didn't understand the significance, not in words, not in traditional ways, but he was calm, content, existing in his space while his people existed in theirs. That evening, after everyone left and the house returned to its usual quiet, the three of them sat in the library. Owen had brought his blocks inside, building on the floor between Evelyn's and Declan's chairs. Not separate from them, but part of the unit, the three of them existing together in comfortable silence. "This is it," Declan said quietly. "This is what I always hoped for and didn't think possible. Not traditional family, not typical happiness, but this: peace, stability, love expressed in ways that work for us rather than for some external standard." "It's perfect," Evelyn said. "In its own imperfect way, it's absolutely perfect." Owen hummed his contentment sound, and the blocks clicked together in patterns only he understood. And outside the windows, the world continued in its chaotic way. While inside the Harlow mansion, inside this household built on patience and understanding and the courage to remain, everything was exactly as it should be. Years would pass. Owen would grow, would change in some ways, and remain consistent in others. He'd never be neurotypical, never fit the world's definition of normal, and that would be okay. More than okay. He'd be himself, understood and accepted, raising in a household that spoke his language instead of demanding he learn theirs. Evelyn and Declan would grow too, would change, would face new challenges as Owen aged and needed different support. But they'd face it together, as they'd faced everything, with patience, with partnership, with the knowledge that they'd chosen each other, not despite the difficulty, but because of it. Because they'd both been looking for exactly this kind of hard work, this kind of meaningful struggle. The foundation would expand, helping more families, spreading the message that autistic children weren't broken and didn't need fixing. That accommodation wasn't weakness. That meeting people where they were, instead of demanding they come to you, wasn't just compassionate. It was right. The mansion on the hill would transform from a place of rumors and fear into something else entirely. Not traditional, not typical, but real. A home built by three people who'd all been invisible in different ways. A man the city called dangerous. A woman who'd spent years caring for people who forgot her. A boy who existed in a world most people couldn't perceive. Finding each other and building something that worked precisely because none of them fit anywhere else. 7 brides had run from this life. The 8th stayed, not because she was braver or stronger or better, but because she'd understood something the others hadn't. that the greatest privilege wasn't comfort or ease or conventional happiness. It was being necessary to someone, being understood by someone, being chosen by someone day after day in all the small ways that mattered. Owen would never say, "I love you," in words, but he'd say it in proximity, in trust, in small hands touching shoulders and foreheads, leaning briefly against arms. He'd say it in humming while Evelyn and Declan existed in his space. He'd say it in coming to them when the world was too much, trusting they'd understand what he couldn't articulate. And that would be enough. More than enough. It would be everything. On quiet evenings, when Owen was asleep and the house was still, Evelyn and Declan would sit together in the library, their space, their ritual, and count their blessings in the currency they'd learned to value. Not traditional milestones or conventional achievements, but the small victories that meant everything. A day without meltdowns. A new skill mastered. A moment of connection in Owen's terms. On Owen's timeline, in Owen's language. They'd pour their drinks and sit in comfortable silence. And sometimes Declan would reach for Evelyn's hand and she'd take it, and they'd exist there together, two people who'd been lost in different ways, finding home in each other, and in the child who'd brought them together. And in his room upstairs, Owen would sleep peacefully, safe and loved and understood, surrounded by people who'd learned to see the world through his eyes instead of demanding he see it through theirs. The city's rumors would fade. The whispers would die. Eventually, people would forget there had ever been 7 brides before Evelyn, would forget the stories of curses and danger and things too dark to name. What they'd remember instead, if they remembered anything at all, was that once there was a man who'd seemed unreachable and a woman who'd seemed ordinary, and together with a boy who didn't speak, they'd built something extraordinary in its absolute ordinariness. A home, a family, a life that worked because they'd stopped trying to force it into shapes it didn't fit, and instead built something entirely their own. And when people asked Evelyn years later, decades later, why she'd stayed when 7 others had run, she'd give them the simplest answer, the truest one. Because they needed me, and I needed them. And sometimes that's all it takes. The mansion stood on its hill, lights burning in windows that had once been dark. Inside, a family existed. Not the family anyone had expected, not the family anyone would have predicted, but a family nonetheless. Real and permanent and built to last. And that, in the end, was the only story that mattered, the one where everyone chose to stay.